It is with great pleasure and honor we welcome you all to the Roundtable Conference 2018. We are extremely honored that recognize the presence of the dignitaries in this eventful evening, and also we are expecting the presence of the chief guest for the evening, Honorable Ajit P. Pereira, the State Minister of Power and Renewable Energy.
Now it's time to seek the blessings from our traditions with the lighting of the oil lamp. We'd like to invite the following dignitaries to do the honors.
Guest of honor for the evening, Professor John Fletcher, Head of Power and Energy Systems, University of New South Wales, Australia. Professor Champika Periyapperuma, Vice Chancellor of University of Moderator. Professor Narendra De Silva, Dean of Faculty of Engineering, University of Moderator. Professor Cecil Kumar, Head of Department of Electrical Engineering.
And representing the panel, Dr. Suren Batagoda, Dr. D.P. Chandima, President of EESoc, Dr. Rasana Samarasinghe, Senior Treasurer of EESoc, Mr. Rukshan Satyananda, Vice President of EESoc, Mr. Sanjeeva Gunasena, Vice President of EESoc.
Very good afternoon. To appreciate your contribution and presence today at this very important, the flagship event of Electrical Engineering Society University of Moderator Roundtable Conference 2018, I would like to welcome first and foremost Vice Chancellor, the University of Moderator, Professor Champika Periyapperuma. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your support, and I must say it's been a privilege to be working with you and your understanding and sharing the same frequency band. And the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, when you have someone, for him the lunch doesn't work unless the lunch is not taken at the department lunchroom. So the former head of Department of Electrical Engineering, currently the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Nalin Wickramasinghe. So I feel lucky, possibly the luckiest head of the department, because to be able to work with Vice Chancellor and Dean of the Faculty who understand what I'm saying even before I complete the sentence. Guest of honor, Professor John Fletcher, from the University of New South Wales, is also the chief consultant to this very important project, Smart Grid Labs. We will be working with him. Also, we're pleased to have a brief chat with him. Welcome you, John, and we look forward to working with you in the coming few days and for the long run in research and collaborations also. A few of the guests we've been awaiting. The panelists, I would like to welcome Dr. B.M.S. Batagoda, the Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy. Thank you, Doctor, for accepting the invitation and your presence, and we're pretty sure that your participation in the panel discussion will definitely make a difference. Dr. Wijekoon, former Professor, Department of Electrical Engineering, currently Director, South Asia Energy Division, Asian Development Bank. Special mention and thank you for your contribution, being sincere well-wisher of the Department of Electrical Engineering, and the ADB's involvement is key events of the department, and your advice and supervision. Thank you very much, sir, and your presence today is very important and definitely will make a difference. Representing the panel, we have a very balanced panel representing the utility and the Sustainable Energy Authority and We have Dr. Darshana Muthumuri from Manitoba HVAC Research Center. Dr. Wijekoon Banda is Chief Engineer, Transmission Planning, Ceylon Electricity Board. I really appreciate and thank you for making time and accepting the invitation to take part in the panel discussion. Dr. Tilak, Siyambalapitiya, Managing Director, Resource Management Association, Associates Private Limited, and one of my power systems gurus, and has been working with us department in the capacity of visiting faculty and the research supervision and so on and so forth for I think more than 2 decades, and I really appreciate your contribution and your presence today, and in the past, the present, and in the future also, your contribution will be very important for us, and we value. Dr. Darshana Muthumuri, Managing Director, Manitoba HVDC Research Center. Thank you for accepting in short notice and holiday. We wish you a wonderful holiday, and really glad that we have you on board the panel tonight. Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe is Deputy Director General, Sri Lanka Sustainable Authority. I welcome Harsha. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Engineer Champika Periyapperuma, my batchmate and long-term friend. He's an entrepreneur in the area of renewable energy, and his presence in the panel will strike a really good balance to the panels in this discussion tonight. And Dr. Narendra De Silva, it deserves special mention, and I think his involvement in setting up the panel and finalizing the title, planning, a lot of time and effort. Narendra, I really appreciate, and your continual engagement and being such a well-wisher of the university and the engineering education of this country. And it's been such a privilege to be working with you. Distinguished invitees, sponsors of this event, faculty members, I hope I did not miss out on anyone special. We are waiting for some invitees. Members of the Electrical Engineering Society and the students, the well-wishers, the department, Electrical Engineering and Electrical Engineering Society. I welcome you all to this important event, the flagship event of the Electrical Engineering Society. And before I wind up, I would like to mention a few things. We also had the Electrical Engineering Conference as international. Now it's in IEEE Explore for the second time. It's a small conference, but very successful. It showed how much room we have to grow and the distance we can travel. Currently, we are talking to 2 IITs, and hopefully Vice Chancellor and myself will visit Shanghai University of Electric Power in a couple of weeks' time. Try to get them on board and make this truly international with better international participation. We are working on master plan. The master plan committee, we have the first draft. We identify some trust areas such as a lighting lab. We have the smart grids lab coming up. Professor Fletcher is here already. And areas like electric transportation systems lab. So I think this conference will pave the way to take one more step further for everyone to understand the importance of research collaboration. within the country, and also collaborating with the well-wishers. We have the partners. We have very renowned and experienced people like Professor Fletcher, the expatriates, doing a lot of work overseas. And clearly, the country has ample problems unresolved in engineering and technology. And we have the people, we have the brain to solve them. What's missing is a platform or a mechanism for these people to get on board and work on these identified problems and come up with amicable, meaningful, and economic and sustainable solutions. We know that it is possible. Everyone knows it's possible, but this mechanism or the platform is still on the table. I think it's great to see a very strong presence from Ceylon Electricity Board. I welcome you also. And hopefully this forum today will help us understand further why the universities, the utilities, and the government agencies, and the expatriate community who are very active in research should come together and work on these burning issues that can be solved. We are very confident that those issues can be solved. I wish you all the very best for a wonderful evening tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your warm words of welcome. EESoc has always been in collaboration with the Department of Electrical Engineering to nurture all-round graduates to the society by enhancing their leadership skills and social awareness. Their projects are organized keeping this primary objective in mind.
Thus, EESoc clearly understands its role among the electrical engineering community as one to bring up young engineers who would uphold the values and principles of their profession in electrical engineering.
Very good evening to all of you. The guest of honor today, Professor John Fletcher, the Dean, Faculty of Engineering, University of Moderator, the Head of the Department, Professor Cecil Kumaravadu, Electrical Engineering Department, all the colleagues, the President of the EESoc, the Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Energy, Dr. Batagoda, all the members of the panel, President IESL, the Director Energy South Asia, Dr. Priyantha Wijetunga, my colleague, and all the members of the faculty at University of Moderator, the students, and all the distinguished invitees. The roundtable conference, which dates back to 2016, if I remember correct, started as a panel discussion in 2001, where University of Moderator started the semester system. I had the privilege of taking the lecture on thermodynamics for all the students, if I remember correct. I only knew then with Dr. Wijetunga mentioning about the panel discussion. That's how I came to know about the roundtable conference. I think it's about 18 years now, continuously addressing, or as the compeer mentioned, one of the compeers mentioned, the EESoc's primary responsibility is to provide leadership skills and social awareness. So I guess the latter part is covered through this panel discussion or the roundtable discussion of conference of the societies and the electrical engineering department's flagship event. When I see the topic or the theme today, Renewable Integrated Secure Power Systems for Sri Lanka. When you look at the audience, everybody is here. Regulator is here, ministry is here, chief executive officer or chief accounting officer of the ministry, whose name is always there in the news, be it international, be it national, social media, and I have known him for a long, long time. And we have the monopoly, you want to call it that way. Ceylon Electricity Board is here, LECO is here, private sector is here, ISL is here. One of the leading universities, most demanding departments among the 5 engineering faculties in Sri Lanka, maybe the second oldest department in the country, electrical engineering. All the graduates who have passed out and serving in this power sector or energy sector, if you want to call it, power sector plus energy sector, whatever you want to call it, but the students know, because lecturers clearly teach the students what is the difference between power and energy. If you don't know those, then you would not want to venture into this one. The consultants who have done lots of research, not knowing some of you or some of us, not having the luxury of learning or studying under the electricity, or those who are reaping the benefits of the research that had been done in the power sector, state of the art, they are all here. They are all working towards not necessarily replacing the lighting of the oil lamp. It is still there. And we start this one with lighting of the oil lamp. So, the theme, if I want to get a little bit focused on the subject matter, why we do this one? Why the theme, the renewable integrated secure power system for Sri Lanka? It's not necessary for Sri Lanka. Entire globe with the sustainable development goals, or you want to call it go green, eco-friendly, sustainable generation of electricity. With the scarcity of resources, in the current context as of yesterday, the number of rupees you pay for $1 is on the rise in a rapid way, and the fuel prices also increased yesterday. Every month on the 10th, you expect either to increase or decrease. Honorable Minister of Finance mentioned, unfortunately, ever since this formula is introduced, it is on the rise, but expected to stabilize or go down in the months of February or so. This is what I heard, but everybody is clamoring or flocking to the gas stations on the eve of the 10th, expecting to fill their fuel tanks. All these are things to be worried about for us. And on one side, the Director General of the regulatory is also on the fire. A war between regulator and the utility. Why these things? All are for us to enjoy affordable, reliable electricity. Affordable, reliable electricity. On one side, the industry. The economy is to be driven by the affordability and the reliability of the electricity supply, without which you cannot attract any investor or the industry. On the domestic sector, the transport sector, everything and anything, the livelihoods needs electricity. Those days when the Laksapana was inaugurated, there was hardly any demand for the supply, 25 megawatts. Now, at 8% or 9% or 10% annual growth of the demand for electricity. It has been there since I was invited to do a World Bank study on kerosene use by my colleague through a World Bank project. It was 8% if I remember correct. Still there. It's increasing. And it has not gone down. We boast about 99% or 100% electrification. You can never achieve 100% because tomorrow there will be a house, there will be a housing scheme, there will be an apartment complex. So it is not 100%. You have to provide electricity to that one. Those days when electricity was generated from hydropower, the main transmission lines just fly over. People did not have electricity where they generated electricity. Only the people in Colombo or Kalanithissa, they had electricity. But later on we decided, when we did studies, that factor also took into account. And we have come a long way. And the 900 megawatts of 300 into 3 Nonochule power plant came at a very later stage than that was planned. In 2008 or so, it was to come and came in 2011 March, if I remember correct. Then 2013 or 12 November, the second stage of the third came, and the third one came. Still, we have not met the total demand. We are not comfortable. What are we talking about? It's only maybe at max 5,000 megawatts of installed capacity. But you look at the neighbor, maybe 55,000 megawatts. We have not even talked about the nuclear. We have talked about, but we are jittery about nuclear. But renewable is talked about. 100% renewable? Why not? And the problems associated with integration of renewables for a small scale or a small size transmission system, these are the things that the common people don't understand. The inventors would come with, okay, I have come up with the invention, it is entirely renewable. We have ample solar. Why can't we do solar? We have lots of wind. We are surrounded by sea. Why not high waves, wave energy? We have some hot springs. Why not geothermal energy? We have lots of biomass. So you can put ideas. But technologies are there. At what is the percentage of renewable integration into the system in the world scenario? So we are paid to get education, to research on this one, energy losses, study about the integration of renewables into the transmission systems, the size of transmission systems, instabilities, minimizing the losses, the energy conservation, all things are being talked about. How do you integrate the renewables into the households? You convert all the rooftops into small generators. What is the reliability? At what cost it comes? The government initiatives, Solar Sangramya, everything and anything. These are all problems that we need to deal. It's big or small, 5,000 versus 5,000, or superconductors. We are talking about bringing in natural gas, generation of electricity, couple the power sector with the transport sector to make it the economics of scale work. All these are problems for our researchers, young electrical engineers who are yet to be born, who are just on the eve of getting inaugurated into the Faculty of Engineering on 16th, 17th, and 18th, and all the faculties. You are passionate about electrical engineering. All these things are problems you have to handle for the humanity. And bottom line is sustainability, affordability, and reliability. You can propose anything, any source, but you need to address all these problems because common people do not understand the nitty-gritty details of the technology. And the engineers need to engineer these problems genuinely without further delay. So I believe in this context, the 18th version of the EESoc, the Student Society of the Electrical Engineering Department, which is the flagship event as introduced, I think one of you introduced at the outset. It is truly a flagship in this context. This powerhouse consisting of power experts will need to research, and this roundtable conference is going to provide a vehicle of opportunity for you to put your brains together. And I am really proud and take in pride being the Vice Chancellor of this, one of the leading faculties in engineering in Sri Lanka, and one of the pioneering departments, electrical engineering. The student body is selecting themes. Last year also the same theme, a power or energy theme, and you learn through this one, and you come out, replace emeritus professors and all of us, and hopefully you will have still the lighting of the oil lamp, but you will have the reliable, affordable, eco-friendly, the solutions of integrating renewables if it is going to be 100% renewable. And I wish the conference all the very best. Thank you very much.
Dr. D.P. Chandima, the President of EESoc. This invitation goes to you.
So, very good evening to all of you. The Vice Chancellor of University of Moratuwa, Professor Champika Periyapperuma, the guest of honor, Professor John Fletcher, the Dean, Faculty of Engineering, Professor Narendra De Silva, the Head of the Department of Electrical Engineering, Professor Cecil Kamarwadu, the senior professors, distinguished panel members, respected invitees, my dear colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to see all of you at the annual flagship event of the Electrical Engineering Society of University of Moratuwa. Being the social arm of the Department of Electrical Engineering of the University of Moratuwa, EESoc has become the place for upcoming engineers to gain leadership qualities and to cooperate with real world to get social awareness. Sri Lanka now needs young and skilled engineers who will become entrepreneurs and uplift the status of the country, while preserving the values and the principle of the profession. EESoc is providing perfect platform for the undergraduates of the department to showcase their capabilities and skills. With the collaboration with many personnel and organizations in the field of electrical engineering, EESoc has narrowed the gap between the industry and the university. And it serves as a forum for the academia, professionals and students. The annual flagship event, Roundtable Conference, is providing an inimitable podium for us to unfold remarks on a highly clement issue which has a connection to the nation and the profession of electrical engineering. A panel of professionals examines and exchanges views on a matter impartially to deliver explanation and possible solutions to all its stakeholders. EESoc has paid an ample concern on power sector of Sri Lanka, as it is considered as one of the crucial sectors which affect the momentum of many other sectors in the country. EESoc came forth with many discussions and brought possible solutions to issues which were directly related to the power sector. So every year, timely and highly relevant topics are selected for the discussion. So I believe that the outcome of the previous discussions we have had have been instrumental in making the decision in the related projects. So I remember that we discussed the electric transportation systems for Sri Lanka a few years back, and now the country is working on it. And the last year we discussed waste to energy. I believe so that we can see more and more waste to energy projects operating or coming into the implementation in an efficient manner in the future. I am happy to say that being a responsible society, so EESoc selected a timely and highly discussed topic for the discussion this year too. So that is a renewable integrated secure power system for Sri Lanka, challenges and solutions. So today we can listen to the panel of experts to know the best practices dealing with the renewable energies and challenges with more renewable admissions to the national grid and the potential solutions to such issues. So I believe that the conclusion of today's discussion would be helpful. So if we are to see more and more renewable into our system without compromising the system security. As the president, I am happy to say that so EESoc is very active throughout the year, and EESoc calendar has many activities everywhere, introducing new activities into its calendar. So among those, EESoc organizes the International Electrical Engineering Conference every other year. So as our head of the department explained before, so a couple of weeks ago we successfully concluded the second international conference on electrical engineering. So where we had the foreign participants along with our local participants. So that actually paved the way for us to collaborate with the foreign universities. So now, as the head of the department explained, so we are now thinking of taking this conference into the higher level, so having more international collaboration with foreign partner universities. So I hope that would become a reality in 2020 conference. EESoc conducted its annual charity event, so we call it We Are With You program. So that is actually conducted for the differently able student at Deaf and Blind School, Ratmalana. So hearing aids and the other need goods were donated to the school by the EESoc. So in addition to that, an undergraduate project exhibition for semester 3 students was organized to provide them a platform for nourish their creative and innovative design concept. And a get-together that was actually recently introduced a few years ago. A get-together of alumni of Department of Electrical Engineering is held annually to enjoy the day with all in the family of the Department of Electrical Engineering. So I, as the President of Electrical Engineering Society, so would like to invite all of you who are the members of the alumni to take part in this year's get-together. So where you can witness the aesthetic skills of our students and so many activities taken place. So the event will be probably held in next month. So it's a privilege for me to be a part of a society that has a long history and achieved many in the past and is going in the right direction, being a responsible society to the nation. I hope so this year roundtable conference will mark another success for the EESoc and identify real challenges in it and provide feasible and sustainable solutions to the issues arose, as the most countries adopt Go Green concept. Finally, I cordially invite all of you to actively take part in today's panel discussion and enjoy the evening with us. Thank you.
The Roundtable Conference has been providing a unique podium for the professionals in the industry to unfold remarks on a prevailing issue in the power sector of Sri Lanka. Through this video, let us share the eminent journey of the Roundtable Conference.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we are ready to move on to the most prominent segment of this event. Yes, we are ready to commence the Roundtable Conference 2018. We cordially invite the following dignitaries to assume their seats at the head table.
Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya, Managing Director at Resource Management Associates Private Limited. Professor John Fletcher, Professor of Electrical Power Engineering, University of New South Wales, Australia. Dr. Suren Batagoda, Secretary, Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy. Dr. H.M. Wijekoon Banda, Chief Engineer of Transmission Planning Division, Ceylon Electricity Board.
Dr. Darshana Muthumuni, Managing Director of the Manitoba HVDC Research Centre, Canada. Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe, Deputy Director General of Operations, Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority. Engineer Champika Periyapperuma, Technical Director of Region Renewables Private Limited.
Now it is with pleasure we hand over the control to the moderator of the Roundtable Conference, Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya. Dear sir, over to you.
Welcome to the panel, my eminent panelists. And to you audience, you who are in the audience, welcome to today's panel discussion. The theme has already been explained to you. And over the next 1 hour and 55 minutes, we will take you through the issues and solutions and the remaining actions that are required to look for renewable energy integration with enhanced system security in power system operations. How we conduct this panel discussion will be as follows. Each one of the eminent persons in the panel have been assigned a theme. We will let you know what the theme is in a moment. And each panelist will make an intervention in the first round, largely focusing on the theme assigned to them. We expect they will do that in about 6 minutes each. Then we allow them to go for a second round, which will also be 6 minutes each, perhaps picking up on things they would have missed in the first round, and also picking or perhaps responding to some of the issues raised by the other panelists in their individual presentations. Thereafter, we will open the floor for a Q&A session, which will be full 40 minutes long. So be patient for almost 1 hour until our eminent panelist presents their point of view on the subject of renewable integration for a secure power system in Sri Lanka. So what we are going to do is that you see a pie chart over here with slices of different colors, and there are 6 slices, and we have assigned a slice to each one of the panelists. So I will not be spending time to introduce the panelists. Their designations and affiliations will be displayed on the screen. So therefore, now we will immediately move on to our first panelist. Dr. B.M.S. Batagoda is Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy. Dr. Batagoda, the society feels perhaps there are some policy gaps with regard to renewable energy, not necessarily on the technical side, but also with regard to the procurement, costing and pricing, a variety of issues, and regulation as well. So we would like to hear from you, what exactly is the policy? At times, I am also not sure as to what the policy is. So tell us what documents are available, what more, and what are the policy gaps?
First of all, I must let me thank the organizers for selecting this very timely topic. As Tilak mentioned, renewable energy is the subject at the moment. Everybody talk about renewable energy, and also everybody talk about policy and regulation gaps, which is all over. I think this type of roundtable is very much necessary for the government to come up with a so-called clear policy on this subject. Excuse me. Tilak is correct. There are so much of issues, conflict, differences in this very important subject that maybe it's because it is so important. That's the reason I believe why this policy gap is, because it's too much important. Everybody wanted them this to be addressed properly. If you talk about the policy per se, policy should not be in written, in my opinion, because the direction of the policy of the government is to promote the maximum possible potential of renewable energy. That's the policy. Government want you all engineers to some or other identify maximum, every single renewable energy potential must be harnessed. That's the policy. It's very clear. So within that framework, of course, there are so many differences, as you say, pricing policy and procurement policy, how do these, all these things are there. But that direction is very clear. Sorry. Cabinet has clearly approved that framework policy. Every single potential of the renewable must be harnessed and do it. But whether you engineers, we are the professionals, whatever, have the technology and enough courage on unite, work together, it's an issue. So this policy is also, we are talking about is energy security is one of the key point. National energy security. You all know power sector or energy sector, we all are thinking the fossil fuel is we dream, we think that's the solution for energy security. So you know, Sri Lanka has no fossil fuel at the moment. Of course, Mana basing we are developing. That's another one. Ingenious fossil fuel like Mana based, we are thinking at the moment as a policy government wanted to explore possibility that was the policy. But at the moment, other than that, there are no fossil fuel in the country. So in a country where you have no fossil fuel, which is you engineers, we are talking about always, if you want power generation, we are talking about the gas, coal, diesel, furnace, so those are the things we are talking about. So how can we ensure the energy security? If you are completely dependent on the imported fuel, can we rely on the energy security? The government fully dependence on the fossil fuel should be gradually stopped or eliminated. So in that sense, government think by 2050 or 2045, Sri Lanka should have its own power. So we said, particularly power sector should be completely from renewable energy. That the government say. But very different opinion. Some engineers say we are completely useless, stupid idea. How Sri Lanka can be self-sufficient in power sector, in renewable energy. But government policy is this. Then because of the, we have no united opinion. The government, even though government as a policy makers wanted to make a decision or make a policy, clearly say Sri Lanka should have 100% renewable energy country by 2050, but it says, but sometime earlier it was, we are talking about by 2030. The government was so much ambitious. So by 2030, government wish is to have 100% renewable country. But then of course our engineers say, oh, this is completely useless, rubbish, that can't be done. Then government, without any, I don't know, secretly, I don't know how should word, we shifted that to 2045. Now at the moment table is, government policy is to have 100% renewables by 2045. But still, a lot of people think this is not good, correct, other thing. The one issue we have is this so-called renewable integration. How do you integrate?
1 minute more.
Yeah, those are the issues. So, dialogue is, my question is, government policy is very clear. But question is why we as a technologists, engineers, have a completely opposite opinion on this. So, some people say 100% renewable is possible. Some say not possible. That's the issue. Why government cannot have a policy is that we as a professionals have completely divided ourselves. As a result of so-called renewable energy integration policies, government is still struggling to get a clear policy. Unless we have worked together, government also cannot make a policy. That's the issue we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Batagoda, and for your intervention. And in fact, Sri Lanka is not alone in this debate on whether there can be 100% renewable grid or not. A few months ago, a group of professors wrote a paper, a very well researched paper, and their conclusion was that a 100% renewable energy grid is impossible. And a few months later, yet another group of eminent professors wrote another paper, and their conclusion was that a 100% renewable grid is actually possible based on the presently available technology. So Sri Lanka is not alone. This debate is all over the world. So let's move on and let's listen to Professor John Fletcher. He's from the Power and he's head of Power and Energy Systems in the University of New South Wales in Australia. Professor John Fletcher will largely speak about the research needs to achieve or try to achieve the goal of renewable integration, not forgetting the security as well, John. But before you start, your name was mentioned in a couple of speeches at the beginning of this session with regard to microgrid. So can you first explain what this thing is about before we get on with your subject?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the microgrid project is the reason why I'm here. I came first to Sri Lanka a year ago to initiate this project, which is funded by the Asian Development Bank. The primary outcome of the microgrid project is to install a microgrid at the University of Moderator. It's approximately 400 kilowatts and will provide energy to the buildings that have the photovoltaic panels on them for approximately 40% of their energy demand. And it's backed up by a battery. And within this particular microgrid project, we have all the elements of what might constitute the primary function of a 100% renewable grid. And along with the introduction of the microgrid comes with it an education program, which we're supporting with the University of Moderator, and a research and teaching lab which will help train the next set of undergraduates and postgraduates in what constitutes smart grid technologies.
All right, thank you very much. So what you say is that before trying it out on a national scale, you want to try it out on a smaller, manageable scale, whether a 100% renewable energy grid is possible.
Absolutely. I think the main purpose of the grid is, of the microgrid at Moderator, is in some senses to make the mistakes that you can make on a small grid, but not mistakes you can make in a big grid.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about the research gaps in microgrids and in achieving high penetrations of renewables into power systems. Australia is not immune. We have a great solar resource. We also have a great resource in coal, uranium, and in gas, most of which is now on the international market, which is giving particular issues to Australia. So to answer the question, is a 100% renewable power grid possible? I would say yes, but realistically it's a 300% renewable grid, because approximately that's how much more you have to invest in capacity within the system. And that was an outcome of a recent review on whether Australia could reach a 100% renewable grid. And it's just indicative of the wide variety of solutions you might come across when looking at large-scale 100% renewable grids. But moving on, where are the gaps in knowledge? Well, at the University of New South Wales, we're looking at microgrids. When we talk about microgrids, fundamentally we think of a small power system where we have to match supply and demand across many timescales, not just on basic supply of energy, but also what happens at the sub-cycle level, what happens when the system fails, the protection, all of that type of meaty technical stuff. And along with that it becomes important to look at communications, control, cybersecurity. All of these elements are part of a microgrid and require significant research investment. So R&D is really at the forefront of achieving microgrids, microgrid technologies, which are really just one element of a 100% renewable powered grid. We have issues in Australia with transmission infrastructure. If we want to reach a 100% renewable grid, we have to invest in it. The reason why we have to invest in it is because we need to be able to get the renewable generation, which is typically remote from demand centres, back to those demand centres. So we're looking at high voltage DC grids, the technology that is required to ship bulk energy across large distances. So these are some of the gaps that are required to be met in order to reach a high penetration of renewable generation into a power system that remains secure. And that's really the important part, is that it's secure, because we often get kind of overcome with the desire to talk about generation, but the generation isn't important, it's the consumers that are important. That's the purpose of the system. So we should also think about the consumer, and we should also think about how the consumer uses power. And that then brings in how the demand can respond to changes in the grid system. So there's a lot we can do by looking at how our consumers use energy and power within the grid. So we need to do research on demand response, looking at load profiles. In Australia, we're very keen on air conditioning. An air conditioner in a typical house will suddenly add 6 kilowatts to the load demand. So if we're trying to match demand and supply, maybe we need to look at switching on and off air conditioners as part of a demand response in order to continue to match load, demand, and generation. So these are important facets of the 100% renewable power system. Of course, there are some out there that think they can overcome the laws of physics. But as power engineers, we are constrained by Faraday's law Kirchhoff's laws, Ohm's laws, these are things we cannot overcome. If we want to ship energy from the distribution system back up through the network, then we have to do something with the voltage. And when we do something with the voltage, quite often it means the voltage goes above its legislated limits. So we are constrained by line impedances, X to R ratios, again, all this technical stuff that probably doesn't mean much to any of us other than power engineers. And part of the issue is articulating these problems to the general public and to the politicians and the people who run the network. So these are important facets.
1 minute.
Okay. So going back to Australia, we have a living lab called South Australia, which is a state that is undergoing particular issues associated with high penetrations of renewables. There was a blackout event across the whole of South Australia about 2 years ago that was instigated by a storm which blew over some transmission lines that rapidly cascaded into a blackout for the whole state. Now, there were something like 7 different things that happened within a 1 minute time stretch, all of which were blamed at some point in time on the blackout, but it tended to come down to, it was all down to the renewables. But the reality is there are lots of different things happening on that network at that one time. So thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And obviously in your second round you will have other more important, perhaps more specific matters to share with us from your experience of conducting research in the renewable energy field. Now we move on to Dr. H.M. Wijekoon Banda. He is the Chief Engineer of the Transmission Planning Division of Ceylon Electricity Board. In fact, the only utility representative we have on the panel. So Dr. Wijekoon will of course give us a briefing as to what the Sri Lanka system looks like and take us to perhaps an elaboration of the word security or secure in terms of the technical performance of the system in the face of large-scale integration of renewable energy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tilak. Good afternoon to everybody, and on behalf of Ceylon Electricity Board, I am thanking the organizing committee for giving me an opportunity to share the what we are doing actually, especially the renewable energy integration. So before, the subject is, highly technical in nature. So that's why the term integrated, renewable energy integration has come there. Otherwise, it would have been basically just a connection of a power plant. So coming back to the present context, that is, if you look into the little insight into our system, so you can see the data given in this slide is 2017. Our installed capacity is about 4 gigawatt or about 4,000 megawatt. And the generation is about 15,000 gigawatt hours. So you can see that our system compared to all the other utilities, we are having a very small system. So the demand is basically it is about 2.6 gigawatt or 2,600 megawatt. And also looking into the energy mix, so if you see that the capacity wise it's about 48, nearly 50% is from the renewables. So we are, earlier we have about 100% renewable, but that is because of the large hydros. Now we have harnessed almost all the hydros in Sri Lanka. So now definitely if we are developing the renewables, we need to develop solar and the wind. So this is just to understand you. So we are the power system. So you can't talk about any renewable energy integration without power system operation. The power system operation is very, very important because with the nature of the available renewable energy resources, what is available now is wind and the solar. So their intermittent nature basically influence the system operation. So therefore, when you are integrating any renewables into the system, definitely we need to look into this kind of aspect. The system operational point of view, and what are the plants that will be operated, their restrictions, their parameters, how they will pick up, and all these parameters actually come into the effect when you are integrating renewable energy. So there are a lot of technical analysis behind that one. So that's why, so you can see we are actually, the system is in island nature. So therefore there is no interconnection. So therefore, so we have to look into that as well when you are developing large scale renewable energy integrations. And this is just to show you based on those capacities, how we have generated the renewables. So you can see in some years, so we have developed up to 60%. I mean, we have generated about 60% of our energy through the renewables. But that is coming with mostly with the large hydros. So when the weather condition is bad, so you can see that there are some years it has come down to the 30%. So that is the present behavior or the present context of the Sri Lankan power system. And this is the history actually. So this is just show you only now compared to the large scale hydropower station. Now we are developing actually other renewables. We call as other renewables except the large hydros. Now about starting from 1996, we have come about 11% of our generation is now coming from these renewables. So the capacity wise, about 550 megawatts now running in the system. So actually now what is happening is what we have to develop more renewables means we need to go for large scale development in solar and the wind. So in that case, the challenges what we face as the planners, so we have to deviate from the conventional planning. The conventional planning is what we did in earlier, maybe 3 to 4 years ago. So we have forecast the demand, we have the conventional plants, and then we schedule the conventional plants based on some least cost, and then we develop the transmission. So that is how we developed how we did the planning. But with these renewables, which is especially the solar and the wind, because of their intermittency nature, definitely we have to deviate it from the conventional planning into the integrated approach. So therefore, what we have done is now, in addition to the conventional planning schedule, so we are developing a plan that is called the integration of renewable-based generation into the Sri Lanka grid. So that is actually in the large scale. So we need to develop, and we will see in the next round of discussion. I will tell you how we will approach and what are our forecasts for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wijekoon. The frequently heard point of view is that electric utilities do not like renewables. It's not only in Sri Lanka, all over the world. This in all fora and perhaps in informal discussions, what we hear is that the utilities do not like renewables. Perhaps Sri Lanka has been different and would like to be different to and have a more proactive approach to planning. Let's move on to our next panelist, Dr. Darshana Muthumani. He is a managing director of Manitoba Hydro HVDC Center, Manitoba Hydro International and Manitoba Hydro HVDC Center. And Dr. Muthumani is a power systems analyst, I would say. And he will perhaps start off by explaining a case study to you, the Great South Australian Blackout, which was blamed by some on renewables. And in fact, Sri Lanka also had a blackout, at least one, which was not formally but informally blamed on renewables sometime a few years ago. So tell us about your case study and then move on to other analytical requirements in making sure that we have a secure, renewable integrated power system. Darshana.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I was going to come here and sit down and relax, but then last minute I was asked to come and make this presentation. Thank you. So, I will explain the case study. I will in fact explain 2 case studies during my 12 minutes. But before I move to the case study, I will touch on a little bit of technology. So we know how to operate power systems very well, right? We have operated power systems for over 100 years, so we know what we are doing. But the power systems we know about are based on synchronous machines, right? Our generators are synchronous machines. They have specific characteristics, and our knowledge, our planning, our thinking is based on power system response that are dominated by the behavior of synchronous machines. Now, with the addition of renewables, where the generation is interfaced through power electronics and their controls, things change. When you have large amounts of renewables, the general behavior of your power system can change because the renewables don't behave anywhere close to how a synchronous machine will behave. There are many differences, but let me explain one of them, the inertia, the so-called inertia. Like the generator, synchronous machine is directly connected to the system, and if you lose a unit at Norachole, you have a power deficit, the rest of the synchronous machines will slow down, right? You say the frequency drops. In slowing down, the kinetic energy in the machine, stored in the machine, will get transferred to electric energy and power will be injected, right? So during an event, power will be injected to the grid. You don't need control, no one have to tell the machine to do that. It's natural, the natural behavior of the machine. That's our traditional inertia. But when you have power electronics, we control the power. The inverters can be controlled very rapidly. So within a cycle or two, right, the inverter will restore the power to its set value. You don't have that same traditional inertia. So if you look at this graph here, like the inertia is critical during this period. Nothing else will come in to save your system from a stability perspective during this period of, let us say, few tenths of milliseconds. If your system can survive that, great. But if your system doesn't have enough machines, you need to do something. The number 2 point I want to highlight is the behavior of renewable generators depend to a large extent on the grid AC network, or maybe DC too, but AC network characteristics that the wind farm or the PV is connected to. When you say AC network characteristics, it can be defined in many ways, but the simplest form is the short circuit level, the fault current at the point of connection. If you don't have too many generators nearby, or if your lines are long coming into that point, the fault levels will be low, and we say we don't have enough short circuit capacity. The key point here is the behavior of the power electronic based converters. Their response will depend on measuring the system quantities, voltage, current, power, and so on. Now, coming out of a fault, this is a real recording or a real life situation. Coming out of a fault, these are the type of voltages that the inverter measuring system will have to deal with, and within a cycle or two, determine what the phase angle is, the magnitude is, and so on to control that inverter properly. If that fails, your inverter will trip or not do the thing that you want to do. So this type of measurements are difficult in what we call our weak grid. If you have a very strong grid, the strongest grid is ideal voltage source. No matter what you do, voltage will remain sinusoidal. Weaker the grid, you will have garbage like this, and the inverters will find it difficult to remain connected during faults. So these are 2 things that we have to think about. So with that as a background, I will go on to describe the South Australian event that Professor Fletcher mentioned about. I was involved in that, performing pre-event studies and also reviewing the report that AMO, the energy market operator, presented to the public. So in short, on that day, they knew that it was going to be bad weather, right, lightning and so on, but they did not think that lightning flashover will cause problems. So they did not redispatch the generation accordingly. So on that day, if you look here, there's quite a bit of renewables, very little thermal generation, which means very little inertia, and quite a bit of imports from Victoria. Okay? So the bad weather did not cause flashovers, but the bad weather, the heavy winds, actually took down some towers, transmission towers. When you take down transmission towers, you weaken the grid. Okay? And what also happened is, in a span of about 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, there were 5 faults, right? Each wind farm of PV is expected to ride through fault, the LVRT compliance. Give or take, each wind farm actually rode through every fault. They did ride through every fault, but unfortunately, they also kept a count of how many faults they rode through during those 2 minutes. When that number hit 3 or 5, they tripped. The industry didn't know that, no one knew that, it was an undocumented feature of wind farms. Now we know, we have learned. So as a result, when you lose all these wind farms, the imports from the transfers from Victoria obviously increased to supply the power. At the next fault, the power transfers too much, which means the angle separation between the 2 ends of the line is high. You have stability issues. At the next fault, that line tripped on out of step. So now you have a serious power deficit here. You don't have wind farms, you lose the line, right? So the frequency dropped. The problem was the frequency dropped too fast, right? If they had 1 or 2 more thermal generators here, the frequency would have dropped slower, allowing, under load shedding and all these things to come and save the system. I'm pretty much done. The response, Australian government's response was this mega, like the large 100 megawatt hour battery, the so-called Tesla battery. I don't think they did too much analysis before they decided that they will install this. Again, my company was involved in designing the outermost control, the so-called park level controls, slow controls, to meet specific stability considerations. So the good thing, I don't know whether this is justifiable economically or not. That's not my deal. I'm a stability person. But there was a major event in 2017, and this battery performed as expected. The recordings matched the simulation that we performed and so on. So all's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and perhaps you can follow up on that in the second round, the particular technical aspects. So we now move on to another essential element in the renewable energy activity, that is the investments and entrepreneurship, particularly in Sri Lanka, of course in other countries as well. It is not only the government or the utility that invests on renewable energy. We have more than 200 private renewable energy power plants, largely mini hydro and a few of the other wind and biomass as well. But nearly perhaps 10,000 solar rooftops, maybe growing at a rate. So therefore, what is the view of the investor and the business community, the entrepreneurship that goes with the renewable energy development and integrating it financially into the utility industry, so that we expect to give a better deal to the electricity customers? So the topic will be covered by Mr. Engineer Champika Periyapperuma, Director Technical of Region Renewables Private Limited. Champika.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and let me first thank my colleague Professor Kumaravadu and my colleague in school, Dr. Narendra De Silva, for inviting me to sit with these very eminent people. I am probably the odd one out here, but I think I represent a very dominant part of the whole system. So I'll quickly go through what the renewable energy sector is in Sri Lanka. So the EPC story, and also it's fitting to see that the diamond sponsor is our good colleague from Sun Power Systems, solar integration company. My background is only on solar. So even though the subject is renewable, I'll focus on solar. And also I think it's fitting because if you look worldwide, solar is going to take the leadership in renewable energy integration. So I would say it jump-started in 2011 with, I am lucky to see Dr. Siyambalapitiya, who is one of the pioneers in introducing solar net metering into the system. Our colleagues, Sun Power, did a lot of work in rural electrification, off-grid, but the real industry evolution in terms of solar integration started in 2011. And it's backed by the government. I took these numbers from the long-term generation plan of Ceylon Electricity Board. So the policy is set. Dr. Batagoda spoke about it. Government had a very optimistic policy, but I think it's been pruned down to 50% from renewable energy sources by 2030, which is encouraging to the industry. And of course, it's been endorsed in the renewable integration itself. So sorry, I don't think you can read the numbers there. It gives you the total integration of other renewable sources 2020, 2025, and 2030. The key factor here is that from 2020 onwards, there's a 20% mixture of other renewable sources in the projected generation plan. So for my colleagues, I see a lot of my colleagues from the industry. There's good news, there's business for us. And the driving factor, I like to congratulate the Minister of Power and Energy for taking the initiative, is this Suryabala Sangramaya. In fact, I was in the private sector for 10 years, working as an employee. Then I moved on to entrepreneurship. Luckily, I had the luxury that my wife is also a batchmate, so she was doing a better job than me, I would say, financially. So I had the courage to move forward. And in the second round, I like to give a message to the young budding engineers to be here, to be bold, to take challenge, but there are some pitfalls. So maybe I'll talk about that in the second round. So with Suryabala Sangramaya, two objectives that we are looking at: by 2020, 200 megawatts and 1,000 megawatts by 2025. And this got a further boost in 2016 when two additional schemes, I would say, were introduced. Net metering was enhanced by net accounting, and net plus schemes where the consumers would now have the opportunity to earn. So which actually took our business to a higher level. Whom we represent, before I go there, let me take an analogy. Ceylon Electricity Board, I see it's been well represented here, has 22,000 employees, 100,000 engineers, and it's a multi-billion enterprise. LECO, again, it's well represented, 1,500 employees and 60 engineers, multi-million-dollar enterprise. Who are we? So we have so far 900 engineers. It's an encouraging number. 3,500 direct employees. Out of that, 500 from the, it's a gender balance wise, we have 500 ladies working in the industry and 1,500 direct employees. I have taken few of our leading solar integrators logos here. There are 250 plus companies and lot of engineers and technical staff being employed. So it's an energy, it's a good mix. It creates a lot of opportunities for people to come in and join the industry. And the most important question, who funds us? Is the people's funding. The banks, industries like us, the companies, we fund ourselves. Okay, the government does introduce schemes for the general public to utilize, but the funding comes from the public as well as the EPC contractors. So gradually you will see so far these numbers are very accurate. As of end of September, we have almost achieved the 200 megawatts of Suryabala Sangramaya because 148 megawatts is already installed and commissioned and 53 pending commissioning. So with that we have achieved the 2020 target. So the number of rooftops I would like to see better. It should be more. But the number of installations and investment, you can see 25 billion is a very conservative number. I would say it's more than 35 billion for a 200 megawatt plus installations. But all that with hardly any additional funding. So this is a message I would like to leave with you, and I'm happy to see some of the owners of these photos that you see are here, and they would endorse that it's a good investment. And the industry, of course, has the challenge that we need quality EPC companies and capable people to drive this forward and achieve the targets. So let me go to the next round and elaborate more on our challenges. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Champika, for that good insight into the business of solar PV. And let's move on to Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe. You are the bridge between the policymaker and the utility and the entrepreneur. And we don't know whether the Sustainable Energy Authority is doing a good job, and you have a difficult job. You have to be the promoter and the regulator as well. So on the one side, if the targets are not made, you will be blamed. And if several people are fighting for the same renewable energy resource, then you need to regulate that as well. So tell us about what's happening in promotion and regulation.
Thank you, Dr. Siyambalapitiya, for the kind introduction, and EESoc for making me a regular member of the panel. I have been here last time discussing waste. So I have a peculiar problem because Mr. Periyapperuma stole all my thunder. So he just became our advertising arm. So this is what we have done in the country. So to start with, policies, Doctor. So we made some drastic change in the renewable energy policy and the regulatory environment by making renewable energy resource a public property. So unlike other countries where the ownership of renewable resources is not very clearly defined, our country, it is owned by the Republic. Each and every one of us equally shares this resource. And what the private sector or the individual people get is a license to use that public resource for a particular time-bound period. So as our sometimes pleasant and sometimes unpleasant duty is to be the custodian of that resource. So our ability and our forte had been to create opportunities for the country. So if you take the case of small power development, Dr. Wijekoon will call it other renewables. It had been lying there for from 1996 until we took over in 2007, a decade of relative inaction, I must say. So the conversion of it to a multi-technology, technology-specific approach, it took a lot of courage from the government side. So it created a lot of opportunities, and that is how our country prospered in renewable energy. We were given a policy target to meet 10% by 2016, which we managed to surpass in 2015, 1 year ahead of time. So similarly, with the net metering, one correction, it was introduced in 2010, but no takers for 1 year, you are quite right. So 2010, we had only very few installations, and later on we saw the prices coming down, the solar prices coming down, and making a business proposition, a very viable business proposition, where we intervene to create more opportunities by introducing the net accounting and the net plus schemes where the industry can take off. But we never ever imagined it would expand so rapidly and so vividly. Splinter groups, we had only 6 companies to start with. Now we have nearly 300. 200 registered with us, 100 unregistered with us. So there are many good things happening, many malpractices happening, but I think overall it is a good thing. So the regulatory environment, we have to deal with so many difficult situations because the sector is governed by so many different legislations, and these legislations get old and they become quite obsolete as we move on. There are new challenges taking us to task every day. Like for example, we never imagined 17,000 power generation entities entering the national grid at any given time. So it's just like Gamanu Jeyaratna's bus industry. 17,000 buses and 17,000 bus operators. So we have a very hard time explaining this to the global transport experts. They never believe each bus has a different operator. So like that, 17,000 power producers, but the act is old, the legislation is old, so they look at them as individual power plants. And we try to force ourselves into these 17,000 from that very old legislation. Things must change. And that is the number one challenge we are facing, keeping pace with the technology, keeping pace with the evolution of the industry. If we don't run faster than them, I think the industry is about to overrun us. So that is my message too. We have to run faster, get up like the deer and the tiger hunting the deer. We have to run faster to be alive. Otherwise, the future looks quite bleak. Our pleasant task is becoming unpleasant by the day. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe. Perhaps in your second round, you can tell us a bit more about solar parks and what's happening in the wind industry. There seems to be a bit of a lull in the wind industry. So tell us whether your promotion is taking effect or failing when it comes to wind power. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to the second round, where each panelist will have a further 6 minutes to cover whatever the panelists would have missed in the first round, as well as to respond to the other panelists' presentation as well. So let me invite Dr. Batagoda again, Secretary, Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy, perhaps to respond to some of the issues that were brought in. And also perhaps I also have a question. Sri Lanka's electricity costs are so high, but we also boast to be a country which is going vigorously in the renewable energy direction. So where are we heading to? Is the problem with renewable energy or something else?
It's a very good question. I must first talk about the Harsha was talking about challenges and the policy level, technology, and you have 17,000 people coming, not 70,000, many people coming. I saw he was talking about 900 engineers. I think basically the private sector taking over the CEB and jointly in the employment in the sector. As you say, policy changes, we have a lot of challenges. We all know with this technological advancement and entrepreneurship coming up, we need to change the policies. But question is, government facing is changing policies, revising act of regulations, almost becoming impossible because we are divided. That's one problem. When we propose some strategy or changes, we as sometimes engineers and professionals in the field have a complete different opinion that I mentioned earlier. So that hold on the government to update the policy change. That this type of roundtables, I think you must come up with how we can bring all the groups together, at least some consensus, at least for key important policy directions, as Harsha was talking about, how to update the existing policy changes to keep up with the emerging trend. As was correctly mentioned, another one, least cost. Our Electricity Act says the electricity has to produce at the least cost. What is least cost? Still we don't know actually. We have a regulator here, Damita here. So we are still debating what is least cost. One hand, when we have a least cost principle, we are always talking about the Sri Lanka is the highest electricity cost country. Then at the same time we are promoting, how do you promote waste to energy, for example. We are giving 36 rupees per unit just to promote waste to energy, plus of course some other social issues. Then we are also promoting new technologies like hot-tech technology, wave energy, geothermal, so many other type of so-called renewable energy. So people believe if you want to promote this type of new technology, you must give a higher price. But our Act doesn't allow us to do so. We have idea is every single renewable or electricity purchase has to be competitive. One question. So the competitor tendering or competition. Sometimes some debate with the tender procedure. Very competitive tenders, you cannot promote new technologies. Yet our Act says we have to have a tender for every single technology. So, for example, pilot projects. If you know, so much of new technologies are there, how to promote them? So, we have so extremist opinion. So, when government promote at least some new technologies, we must go for standard tariff system, and competition tender procedure is not possible for every type of renewables, but some groups are no, extremistly, no, we can't do that. So, we are divided. So, therefore, our policies are kind of stagnated, and that's the one issue we are having. So, the cost is, as you say, whether some people believe when you promote renewables, paying 36 rupees for waste to energy, or maybe another 25 rupees or something biomass energy or wave energy, they say that will increase the cost. So, already people blame Sri Lanka has highest cost electricity. Why you are giving 25 or 30 rupees for wave energy? Even though maybe 10 megawatt, 5 megawatt is small thing. That type of attitudes or perception of ideology has somewhat delay the introduction of the new technologies for the country. So, how do we manage this? That's the one major problem. The number two is, so as I mentioned, Harsha was talking about, is also we are talking about 30%, 2030, we reach 50%. As I mentioned, 2045, we will go to 100%. So, how do you read there? That's the issue. With this, Dr. Wijekoon Banda was talking about integration. So, what independence issue. So-called sometimes, Australian example says, sometimes because of renewables, so power system stability issue. So, then how do we read there? The people are complaining, while you are having 45%, 2040, 100% renewable, you are promoting coal. You are developing LNG power plant more. So, why you do this? So, this we ourselves are not clear as a professional, sometimes me as a government, sometimes we don't know what is the strategy to go there. So, then cost versus new technology. Unless you get new technologies, sometime in the long run, you will end up with not having a good power system and so many systems. So, Harsha was talking about the 17,000. In fact, my vision, our vision, government vision is not 17,000 power producers. We want about 6 million power producers. The policy is every single house should have a power plant. That's what you are talking about. We also talked policy-wise talking about every single household or every single power customers as much as possible must be utility independent. Why not? The professor was studying about the microgrid. Very good concept. If you microgrid concept successful, why not? A small grid for small villages or something else. So, our dream is, if you want to achieve 100% renewable target, if you want to be self-sufficient in the in the power system, if you want to have secure the energy secured nation, we think actually at the government side, but technical engineers must help us how to do it. Every household should have the powerhouse. So, everybody as much as possible you produce your own energy. In that case, we end up with having at least 5 million power producers, not the 17,000, Harsha. So, that's what I'm mentioning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Batagoda, elaborating the problems and the issues and the future course of action. Perhaps we will have to follow and think differently if we are to reach the goals. Back to Professor John Fletcher. Perhaps, Professor Fletcher, in addition to responding some of the questions, you can also talk about the new renewable energy technologies such as perhaps wave energy or other emerging technologies as to where they are in the world scene. Are they close to becoming commercially viable, and are they ready for grid integration?
Okay, thank you. Yes, new technologies. I think I would concentrate more on what new technologies we need to integrate, what are now conventional renewable resources like wind and PV, particularly as the penetrations of those technologies grow within our power system. So it's less about the renewable source itself, but more about how we integrate those renewable resources to get ourselves to the point where we have a reliable and secure power system. So the types of things I'm thinking about, and for the younger engineers amongst us who are still training and going through their education, think about things like power electronics and how they can be used within the power system. So technologies like semiconductor-based transformers, which perform the same action as a transformer, but also give you some additional flexibility in what you do on the secondary side, so you can control your voltage and your real and your reactive power much more closely than you can do with a traditional transformer. And that's an example of the type of technology we want to trial within our smart grid facility at the University of Moderator. So it's an example of where we can start embedding these new technologies within our education portfolio and train the next set of engineers to be conversant in these new technologies, which then break down some of the perceived barriers at integrating large amounts of renewables. Because all this stuff is technically possible. There's nothing we can't do with electronics and semiconductors. It's really having the belief in the faith that we can do it and proving that it works. So things like inverter control, advanced inverter control techniques. I heard from my colleague about how the control in the inverters helped catalyze the problem in South Australia. There's actually no reason why we can't be using more advanced techniques. In fact, we're very much constrained by regulation and standards. So that's another area where we need to look at how new technology fits and how we approach what is going to be a new paradigm in how we operate the power system. This idea of base load really is not going to fit in the new paradigm and how we run power systems. We're going to have layers of communication and control. We're going to have to worry about data analytics and how we integrate all these different layers and all these different facets together. So really it's a very multidisciplinary engineering application. There's loads of jobs in it. It's really good to get into this stuff at the earliest stage. So we have advanced inverter control, smart grids, data analytics, standards, regulation. These are all going to have to be looked at and revised as we approach this new paradigm for power system control. So those are some of the research elements. It all centers about power electronics, because power electronics gives us the ability to control large amounts of energy and power in very short time scales. We can send it around the network whichever way we want. We can have bidirectional networks, and all of these things help us deliver what we hope would be a 100% renewables system. And of course, we're talking about renewables. Really, the world is thinking more about low carbon. And if it's not renewables, what is the other low carbon technologies we have? The only really one I can think of is nuclear. So these are the big dilemmas we face. And I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor John Fletcher. And we will move on to Dr. Wijekoon Banda. Perhaps in this leg of your intervention, perhaps you can try to define what security is. We have not been contemplating security. What do we mean by security? What do you think the electricity customers mean by security? Not having power or a lower reliability? Perhaps we need to shed some light on this, and being engineers, we need to quantify this security.
Yeah, by definition, electrical engineering point of power system security is under contingency conditions. The power system should be capable of delivering or meeting the demand under any contingent condition. Contingency conditions mean it can be a tripping of the larger generator, maybe a tripping of lines like that. But if you when you come to the customer, basically they mostly like to have reliable power supply. First thing is the reliability. Reliability is how much, throughout the day, if it's 24 hours a day. So if the power is available at 24 hours a day, then the people, customers are satisfied that our supply reliability is 100%. But meantime, then it comes to the quality. So when the reliability comes, when we achieve the reliability, then only we can talk about the quality. Because quality is very concerned. Because if we look into the different devices, their equipment behaviors are different. Manufacturing industries, the equipment behavior are different. And if we come into the domestic, the equipment behavior is different. So therefore, the quality and the reliability, the stock parity, and then comes to the quality. And so that is the customer point of view. But anyway, it's a system point of view, so we need to maintain the system security. So, so I will start what I will stop from my previous discussion. So when you are, dealing with power system security, basically we need to maintain the system reliability as the system operator. So therefore, when you are integrating renewables, the renewables is basically, their output is varying with the time. So if it is a wind speed vary, then output will vary, the system has to respond. So because finally the demand, we have to meet the demand somehow. So therefore, so when these power sources, power output is varied, so definitely the system has to respond for meeting the customer. And finally the signal is coming from the frequency. So therefore we need to, so when you are dealing with the renewable energy integration, we need to look into all these aspects. Right? So that means we need to maintain the system reliability. And also we need to see how much reserve is required. So therefore, when you are analyzing this system integration, it is a lot of mathematical modeling. Lot of mathematical modeling exercise. So that means if you see the power system, so basically the power system we have the generators, then generator we have to model, the generator itself we have to model, and then the governor we have to model, and then the AVR we have to model, and the transmission we have to model. All these things has to be modeled in a mathematical way. So therefore, because of this transient nature of these the power sources, not compared to the previous conventional generators, we need these models with a certain accuracy, lot of accuracy. Maybe we need to go for the third order, fourth order accuracy level. So therefore, in that sense, CB also we have a program of tuning of model parameters. So actually, so we have obtained the service of Mahindra Hydro International. So we have tested our generators for extracting model parameters, and then we have tuned our models, and then we proceed these integration studies. And in the integration studies itself, we divided into two categories. One is in the operational part, other one is the system stability or the system network study part. In the system operation, in a daily curve, each half an hourly, you need to see the demand and what is the contribution from your renewable source and what is the difference coming from your conventional generators. So like that way, you need to analyze this one for daily load curve for 365 in the year. So, but actually this is a long exercise. Therefore, we have only analyzed only 3 cases, wet, dry and high wind. And then we, out of these 3 scenarios, we have taken 2 days, 1 week, and other one is a weekend. So then each day we have to run about 48 simulations. So like that, you can see how many simulation it involves. About 300 simulations are involved for a particular event. So therefore, a lot of mathematical involvements are there in order to maintain how much we can get with the available resources. So I mean, with the time, I mean, it's a lot of technical things. So if you look into the exercise, the results of this outcome, you can see the graph there. So I mean, up to 2017, So our addition for the renewable is maybe about 37 megawatt, but according to our the integration plan, this has to include about 145 per year. So it is investment about 2 billion per year investment is required for renewable. So that is for the next 20 years. So the time is over. So if you have any questions, we can discuss further during the discussion stage. So, and addition for the next 10 years, you can see about 1,200 megawatt should be developed, and solar 1,300 megawatt should be developed. Mini hydro, because almost that is over, it is only a little in quantity, and biomass. So we can see the lot of variable renewable addition, about 2,500 megawatt, we are going to accommodate into the system. So it's a lot of challenge, a lot of technical studies, and a lot of involvements are there. Okay, so we will discuss in detail if you have any questions during the discussion.
Good. Thank you very much, Dr. Wijekoon. Surely you will have a lot of questions to him about the technical aspects and how the grid will develop to integrate such large amounts of renewables. Dr. Darshana Muthumani, is Sri Lanka also heading in the same direction of South Australia, and perhaps the battery will be a solution, or what do you think? You have a knowledge of the Sri Lanka grid as well, so maybe you can at least express an opinion on this.
I don't want to get into trouble, but I will say what I saw during my studies here.
Okay.
I don't think so, because MANA, like I was just talking to Dr. Wijekoon, the short circuit ratio is 5. The short circuit ratio. You have trouble when that short circuit ratio at the interconnection point gets down to about 2. Of course, you have trouble with at 3, 4, but generally 5 is good. If you look at Sri Lanka, we have a lot of thermal generation around the country, and we don't have 200 kilometer lines that add impedance to the network. It's a relatively weak, strong system from that point of view. So if managed properly, I think we can go into very high penetrations.
Yes.
That's my opinion.
All right, yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start with my last slide. I think this is something important to note, like the battery. When the event happened in 2017, the battery helped stabilize the system. And this was copied from the internet on Tesla's website that they were boasting about their system. And if you read along, it says that the Tesla came into life in a record lightning time of what? Around 114 or 120 milliseconds. That's about 5 to 7 cycles. If you have stability issues, if you don't have enough inertia, that's really not lightning speed. Okay? So right now, with synthetic inertia right battery, they can help. But in order for the battery to come into the picture, first you have to measure that there's something wrong. That takes 1 to 2 cycles. Then the control systems, all the delays, like this is what we are talking about this is state of the art. This is what we have now. Okay? So I will talk about another technical aspect of integrating renewable energy. And Dr. Wijekoon, in one of the presenters, mentioned that by 2025, like we might have 1,000 megawatts of solar PV, which to me means that there will be a large number of, let's say, 50, 100, 25 megawatts plants scattered around the country, in addition to, of course, rooftop. So now we come to this, we can get into this system called control interactions, right? So if you have 2 or more renewable energy, solar or wind or dynamic devices connected to let us say a common point or in that same local area, during recovering from a fault, they can both try to help the system by trying to control the voltage, and ideally what we want is a stable recovery like this, right? If they are too eager and if the system conditions are weak, we can have a situation where they will fight with each other and drive us into a stability situation. Okay? And this is a challenge really when we are dealing with a wind farm from manufacturer 1 and wind farm PV from manufacturer 2, and we don't know what they do with their controls, their gains and all that. Once again, would Sri Lanka have this problem? Maybe not, because we have a strong grid and the interconnection points are likely strong. Right? These problems happen when the interconnection point is weak. The problems mostly happen, in my humble opinion, is because these devices can inject reactive power pretty fast. Right? So when you inject reactive power to a weak grid, like a grid where the impedance looking into the grid is high, a small amount of reactive power can cause a large variation in the voltage. So this will inject Q, cause the voltage to go up, they will back off, and rather than stabilizing, this can happen. So these should be identified before commissioning. These should be given prominence. Otherwise, like, you will think that renewable energy is a problem. It's not. It's just that you didn't pay due diligence. They should be studied. So here's another real-life example from Australia. This one's from New South Wales, a 200 megawatt wind farm somewhere here. There are SVCs and other solar farms in between. And when we did the study, when you interconnect this wind farm, recovering from a fault, this is how the power voltage oscillates. This is not acceptable. And when we observe these things, you have to do analysis. I have listed, if you get this PowerPoint, this is just to illustrate how an engineer would go about doing the analysis and try to find a solution. So again, renewable energy is not the problem. Not paying due diligence and attention probably is the problem. Like, how do you overcome these? Again, like I said, studies. And I have to emphasize, you can't do studies with generic models. Generic models, as accurate or detailed as they are just generic. You have to obtain, as planners, you have to obtain the specific model tuned to that specific site from the vendor. Otherwise, your studies are useless. The industry has learned, this industry is now 10 years old. People have learned a lot. Australia, England, Germany, they know a lot about. We have learned a lot. We have to learn from these past experiences. So grid codes are changing continuously, or interconnection requirements, with that knowledge. For example, LVRT, low voltage right through, you must enforce it. This has been there for a long time. HVRT, high voltage right through. Maybe this is important in Sri Lanka, because both of these are important in Sri Lanka, because if you look at the 2015 blackout, when Norachole tripped during a fault, right, of course you want the wind farm to recover from the low voltage of the fault. During that event, and from experience, we know that in our system, the voltage will actually go aft if this Norachole tripping happened at night. So HVRT, enforcing HVRT on these wind farms is important, because you don't want the wind farms and the PVs to trip because of the high voltage as well. So, like, paying due diligence, paying attention to grid codes, interconnection requirements, studies, I believe is the way forward. And I personally think a significant percentage of renewable energy is present in Sri Lanka. And I want to end my talk by saying that, like, I have been asked, and the question is floating around, can we go up to how much renewable energy can we integrate into our grid? Personally, I think that's the wrong question to ask. I think we should have a plan, and the question should be, can we integrate X percentage of renewable energy into the grid? If we are going for, let's say, 75, 80, 100, whatever, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen in stages, and the planning should be in that stage-wise. This is the international practice. It's happening elsewhere in the world, and I think we should all learn from the knowledge of the rest of the countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there will be more questions for you at the Q&A session. Engineer Champika Periyapperuma, your second round, perhaps you can also focus on financing and the finances that are available, whether the investor community is seeing the finances available to be adequate for renewable developers.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start from where I stopped, but before that, I'd like to take a few clues from my fellow presenters. When Professor Fletcher said, if you are looking at 100% renewable, you need 300% capacity. I can see, including my partner, my fellow colleagues brimming year to year, knowing that there is a lot of scope. But then, for me, I wear two hats. I wear the engineer's hat as well as I wear the entrepreneur's hat. So the entrepreneur's hat would say, okay, go ahead, go and do it. But the engineering hat draws me back. Can we sustain? Can this system work like this? Is there any difficulties? Is there security in terms of the customer? So I think that's the challenge the entrepreneur as well as the engineering entrepreneur, I would say, would see. And that's what we like to see, more and more engineers getting into this business. A lot of engineers are entrepreneurs, owners of this business. So I'd like to see more and more engineers joining. Okay, and like looking at the international experience and of course in terms of the utility, I am happy to see that a lot of work is being done, and the system integration, absorption of renewable energy, the networks are getting extended. We have ADB funded projects for transmission expansion. So the network is getting set up. But at the end of the day, we should have the capacity grown in Sri Lanka to meet that demand. It's fine, the policy is there. I think the policy gives enough of opportunity for all the 250 plus integrators to survive and much more to come. But then like whether we have that framework, especially in terms of financing and keeping the faith of the community, this system should work for the 10 years, 15 years, then only this system, the stability and of course the financial stability will move forward and the financiers will finance. So getting into the expectations of our community, like looking at from the policymakers and from the regulators and of course the utility, three key stakeholders. So we are asking for very limited things, like resolving distribution network stability issues. So as I told, it's been addressed. So it's like most of these things are being addressed. So defining timelines in interconnection, I would think the utility colleagues would agree that we can do more, and we have to have a good healthy relationship. And at the moment there are some guidelines being prepared in terms of timelines and what to keep, and of course define standards and practices, I think, which is very important. The best practices, again, a document is being prepared from the regulators end. So these are good things that we see as responsible EPC contractors. We should not, for instance, see any fire. The first instance, you have a household which has a fire due to a solar. There is going to be a lot of negativity. It may not be due to a fault of the solar system itself, but that would give a very bad negative picture. So I think these standards and practices should be in place. There are a lot of things being done within the last couple of years by SCA, Sri Lanka standards, and I can see one of the key consultants into this new defined standards is here in the audience. So we are happy to see that. Then the second challenge we have, I think engineers, we have enough. There are good quality engineers being produced by the universities, and Moderator, I would say, taking the lead. I employ close to 10 engineers. Good gender balance. I have 4 lady engineers. So, and for the ladies, I think it's one thing, if you are to go to the solar industry, you have to keep fit. One of the challenges would be you have to get into a 3-4 story building. So you have to be fit and you have to be daring. But specific training, I think there's a lot of designing getting into this industry, much more than any other industry. If you give the same building with same equipment to 3 EPC contractors, they would come up with 3 different designs, and some would give better yield, some would give better security, some would give better reliability. So there is a lot of engineering involved, and rather than the conventional signing of documents and checking leave sheets, the engineers have a lot of things that you can actually apply into your system. So coming to the question that Dr. Siyambalapitiya asked, investor confidence. I am happy to see some bankers here. We have been, this is one industry, again I like to elaborate, an engineer can take the challenge and get in without much of a capital. Because systems perform, the technology is proven, bankers are willing to lend. But at what interest rates and at what tenor? So this is the challenge we have. We like to see that these the lower interest schemes coming in. There is one already being negotiated and being implemented. So that is one aspect. And then the second aspect is that the tariffs given for this PV integration, in my opinion, should remain, because for two things. One is that if you have to sustain a business, you can start the business and close it in 3 years. But this is one industry where you hardly have any renewable service income. This is just washing the panels. So you have to make a decent profit in order to give that 10-year warranty, and the company should sustain for 10 years. So with that, I think we like to see the present tariffs remaining at least until these targets are met. Maybe
All
I'll
right.
get
Thank
to
you
more
very much. I
questions,
think you have been very specific and very focused on what the entrepreneurs need to keep going. Thank you very much, Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe. I think you have enough material to go through the next 6 minutes.
Firstly, I did a brief calculation, 6 million households. On the same Gamanu Ratna concept, we will have 350 Gamanu Ratnas because 6 million divided by 17,000 is 350.
Yeah.
So we'll have enormous trouble, I think, if our secretary's vision in the same private bus model is enacted. So, but my message is far more positive than that. So, especially to the young engineers who will be joining the profession. So, they say there is a Chinese curse. The curse is, may you live in interesting times. So, it is not a curse to the young engineers. You will be living in interesting times. It will be quite a different world compared to the good old days when Dr. Siyambalapitiya and them were utility engineers. I think things are evolving, things are becoming difficult, so we'll have interesting times ahead. So, if we briefly go through the civilization, the evolution of our civilization. So, earlier it was power, men, animal, muscle power, trade winds and things like that. Industrial revolution, then power was coal, steam and technology, and presently power means oil, mobility, low cost, reliable grid. But in the future, when you enter the profession, it will be electricity wherever, whenever. That is my forecast for you. So I foresee a world where electricity is going to be the major energy carrier, leaving out other contenders like transport fuels. Everything will become electric, in my humble opinion, in about 50-100 years from now. So we have to be ready. The name of the game is energy transition. So investment funds flowing, it has this phenomenon is already there. From 2011, I think the tide is shifting from newer and innovative support schemes for renewables and massive divestments in the fossil fuel assets. So meaning the tide has begun, even though we don't realize it quickly. This is energy transition is taking place. So the drivers, I would say, we often fight over these things with people like Dr. Narendra. So what will be the future architecture? Distributed renewable, energy storage and demand response. So demand response is what I would like to focus a little bit, because it provides you the cheapest possible means of meeting electrical energy demand. In a electricity only world, this will become a part and parcel of our day-to-day life. So demand response and demand side management and energy efficiency is going to be a key contender, even though the topic of today's deliberations, it doesn't mention it. But I think this is going to be the new things. And by Sri Lanka by 2050, I must make a correction. The energy policy, draft energy policy says carbon neutrality by 2050, not 100% of renewable energy or anything. So we will have a well-developed economy, hopefully, where things are going. Population about 18 million and low energy intensity of economy as we, and then society integrated by electronic means, so less traveling, and transport energy through electricity, and most homes operating off grid. So these are the things I dream these days, and large facilities as energy positive buildings. Most of the at least 3-4 story buildings becoming energy positive. At least the head office building of Sustainable Energy Authority will be energy positive, energy plus. So biomass from carbon sequestration plantations as thermal energy, and the country carbon neutral. So this is on the blank sheet, the mandate given to the young engineers. So we hope it will be a very, very interesting time. So the time has come for the electricity industry. Champika told he's the odd one out, but I am the odd one out because every one of them except Dr. Batagoda are electrical engineers. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I challenge the industry. You have to either evolve and transform yourself into something better, or face a decline like the copper connected telephone industry. So people who got stuck with the copper connections, they faced a decline, and they are no longer in the business. So people who went the fiber way and the wireless way, they prospered. So this is we are at crossroads. So our country, in our very little small way, we have provided you with ample opportunities, the renewable energy industry, and we have challenged you, and we are very glad to be in this. Even now, it is very interesting times, even though it's a Chinese curse. I think it's a Sri Lankan blessing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's give a round of applause to our panelists for their strenuous work and 2 rounds of presentations. So we now have 40 minutes of time for you to ask questions, or perhaps briefly express your opinions on the theme, or very specifically on what was presented by any one of our panelists. So let's begin the Q&A session. When you ask a question, please, we would like you to identify yourselves by name, and if you like, your affiliation as well. And if you want to point the question to a specific panelist, we would like to know that as well. Otherwise, you can make a general or you can present a general question so that any one of the panelists can answer that as well. So may we have your questions then? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I will throw the first question since nobody is...
yeah, your name and affiliation, please.
Okay, my name is Dhammika Nanakara. Of course, coincidentally, there is an introduction about me in page 129 of this Sunya. It's a good topic. So I think we have to anyway congratulate CEB, Ministry, present government, previous governments, the way they are trying to promote renewable energy in Sri Lanka. Why I say so? For example, we talk a lot of about renewable energy in India, for example. But in India, rooftops, if you see, from transformer capacity, they allow only 20% penetration. But in Sri Lanka, 100% penetration is allowed. So that's a good part. And now, other thing is, Dr. Siyambalapitiya mentioned that some professors said renewable is not possible 100%. Some are telling 100% possible. So it is 100% possible. So then government and the policy makers will have to talk to these people who are telling 100% possible and to look for the solutions. Why I say so? If we really take Denmark, for example, Denmark plan is
to go 100% renewable for all the energy systems, not only electricity, for their entire energy system, including transport and other, by 2050. By 2035, they are going to go 100% electricity on 100% renewable. So, in this context, Sri Lanka is very well placed in renewable energy to harness more and more. Simple reason is we have a very big hydro storage, which can be a indirect storage facility. And now, where all the other, for example, South Australia is not having that flexibility. My question is to Dr. Wijekoon and maybe the panelists. We in Sri Lanka, our secretary, Dr. Batagoda said, okay, 5 million houses, we want to go 5 million rooftops. So it's quite a big amount of energy. Still, then in time to come, we have to have a plan how to store that energy. And also, and then this demand side management and supply side management, we don't have to worry so much, because demand side management, because we are talking about another 30 years journey. By that time, the ACs, washing machines, fridges, whatever coming will be Wi-Fi enabled. System control center can switch off whichever ACs, whichever refrigerators. System control center can cut off whichever inverter. So all these equipment will be addressable. So that technology will be there another 20 years time. So we are still a developing country, long way to go, so we don't have to worry so much. But storage and so on will be very important aspect. So what would be our plans now when we are getting more and more renewable solar power and so on? What would be our plans and how we are going to accommodate that energy?
Fine, thank you very much. Would Dr. Wijekoon respond to the very specific question on using hydro storage to support more renewables?
Yeah, thank you, Champika. So actually, if you look into the future plan, because these supports for 1,200 megawatt of solar and another about 1,300 megawatt of wind, all these variables, basically the intermittency nature, we have not included any batteries into the system for controlling the ramping up and ramping down of these kind of solar and the wind. So we have taken all the supports from these kind of hydro, as well as in some support from the whatever the combined cycle power plant running in the system, where what we thought about that which power plant can ramp out the power when these solar and the wind ramping down. So therefore, in our integration plan, so we have taken into consideration the pre-ground mode of these kind of hydropower stations. So that's why you can see that we in our 2,500 megawatt of addition of solar and the wind, we have not put any additional support from the batteries or any other thing. So we have well taken in all these kind of aspects. And other thing is that this renewable energy integration plan, which is actually we are well proud of that, we are developing in-house with our planning branch engineers, and we are improving that the time to time. So this plan is actually like our conventional plan, the generation plan and the transmission plan. This is also we review once in 2 years. So therefore, we can see that in the previous year, the 2018 the studies, we have seen that the cost of the batteries and all these kind of other the support, the generation supportive mechanisms are a little bit expensive. So now we have started our next revision of the renewable energy integration plan. So now, we are going to taken into the consideration of these kind of batteries. So we will take it in two aspects. One aspect is to support the system stability, that means the controlling of the ramping up and ramping down of these kind of intermittent based generation. And also other aspect is the energy storage type, that is a high energy density, high energy density batteries, where we can keep some energy and then we can dispatch into the peak time, but when the cost is very high. So that is actually we are looking into the next the renewable integration revision.
Fine. Any other panelists would want to make any point? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Now, that's correct. We have two groups. We are dreaming to have 100% renewables by 2050. Some say no. You are right. Actually, we must talk to the people who promote this idea of government, including government, and we still struggling how to get there. So strategy has to be developed, as you mentioned, how you complement each type of major hydro with other. So various different technologies of the renewable can be complement each other, supplement each other. Whatever we are talking all, we are talking, but I don't think we have not fully done a roadmap how to do it. That's the missing gap. I think this type of dialogue is very encouraging. So we must come up with maybe that roadmap can be challenged by other group. That's what is missing in Sri Lanka. Next phase, you must do some more of the roadmap, if they're feasible or not.
Sure. Secretary says the roadmap is not there, or whatever that is there is not strong enough. Fine. Does that satisfy you, Dhammika, or you have any follow-up question?
No, that's fine. Only a small thing is, in this type of exercise, okay, already said that the policy has to be, or the roadmap has to be developed. One other aspect is the modeling. Now we are going to have so many renewables coming up, and then also for the backup you have to have, like that for the illness you have Panadol and so on. We are not going to drink Panadol every day, but you have to have Panadol in your pocket. Like that, you have to have some backup generation, maybe whatever way, gas turbines or IC engines, whatever. So the modeling, how is our modeling going to happen? Because finally, it's modeling will tell you how is your stability going to happen, how stable your system and so on. So what are our plans for a proper modeling of the power system?
Perhaps I'll give that question to Dr. Muthumani. You have looked at least certain aspects of our modeling. Can you give a quick response to that question? Yes, that's fine.
When you talk of analysis and modeling, there are many aspects to that, right? Because operational aspects like availability of resources and so on, I'm not going to talk about that. When it comes to stability, obviously you need to have a very accurate model of your basic system, right? That is key. Before you go into details of generators and governors, like if you don't have your base, the load flows and all that, the line parameters, then you are in deep trouble. So you have to pay attention and get that model right. Number two, of course, like the exercises that we did and CB is doing, get your dynamic devices, the existing generators, tested and validated, right? And most importantly, you have events in your system, you have faults and so on, right? Try to recreate those in your simulation and get confidence in your model, right? Number three, make sure that you do get renewable energy wind and PV models from the vendor, otherwise you will get into deep trouble in years to come. Number four, you have to take a next step. Our traditional stability studies that you were probably mentioning is based on RMS type simulations, right? That probably is not going to be enough. You have to go to more detailed simulation platforms where you actually simulate the waveforms rather than the RMS quantities. So those are my points. The key is, have a model that you can be confident about.
Thank you very much. Can we move on to another question? Yes, Mr. Vijay.
Just regarding
just a moment.
System
yes.
modeling.
Yes.
So like Dr. Muthumani told, so that is two areas. One is at the operational approach, other one is the system stability point of view. So in CB actually, so we are well doing this kind of modeling. We use three softwares. So the one software is actually we use stochastic dual dynamic program, we call it STDP. So we have taken the latest version of this one, which we can incorporate all this transmission into the this operational model. So therefore, we can optimize your transmission and also your generation into one platform, so that we can get optimized the final output of a system. So in that situation, we have well taken all our generators, the capabilities, how far it can be deloaded. For an example, Noracholi, we can deload only up to about 180 megawatt. All these restrictions and each and every generator specific, their capabilities, and everything we have taken into these models. And then first we run this model that is the SDDP model to consider what is the value of the water value. And that is then taken into another model we call it a NCP model, that is we run as a daily load curve basis. So that is the system operation point of view. And then we move on to the system stability. In system stability also, these solar plant, the solar panel characteristic, the irradiation levels, and all these kind of things we have model. So actually in the new version of the PSCC model what we use, so initially we can use only the 10 points in the variation in the solar irradiation. Now we have, we have trained our engineers to run some Python programming, so we can model up to about 40-30 points in the solar irradiation variation. So these kind of dynamics models are running, so still we are improving our models. So that is actually what we are practicing.
Good, and thank you. Nice to hear that. Let's move on to the next question.
Okay. Good evening, and I'm one of the former deputy chairmen and chairman of CEB. Before my colleague engineers got rid of me about 1.5 years back. But today I stand here as the CEO of the largest renewable energy company in Sri Lanka. We own over 120, 130 megawatts of all forms of renewable energy in operation in Sri Lanka. So I look at the question in both angles, from the utility angle as well as the private entrepreneurs angle. And when I look at the topic here, renewable integrated secure power system for Sri Lanka, I think there is no challenge in that. If you don't put the cost aspect away, and let us put, now in Australia they have put 100 megawatt Tesla battery systems, let us put 5 of them here, or 10 of them here, then we'll comfortably take as much as solar. So the cost aspect should come in, and the challenge is based on that, how to make a viable, secure system. And based on that, I will put a question to perhaps to Professor John and also to Dr. Muttumani. That is, in Australia's calculations, when they put up this 100 megawatt, 126 megawatt hour system, what is the cost of a unit of electricity to be stored and taken out? That is to be shifted by time shift, by 6 hours or 10 hours, to shift a stored unit to a different time slot. And what is the expected cost, including the capital? And also I would like to put some light on Dr. Muttumani's assertion that that LVRT which caused the system failure or tripping of the wind turbines after about 3 or 5, whatever the number of low voltage ride-throughs, because LVRT works on the principle when the grid is not available, the entire production of the wind turbine is put onto a natural air-cooled resistor. So entire energy is put into a natural air-cooled resistor typically. And if you put several times that much of energy into it, it will catch fire. That may be a reason why about 2-3 times it will automatically switch off. So otherwise it will be dangerous. So that may be a reason. So in all the wind generators also, we have the same system. So we might, in time to come, we might also face similar situation. So my specific question is, what is the cost to shift a unit of electricity from say 6 hours based on the Australian experience.
Fine. Thank you for raising perhaps the inevitable question of cost. I tried to encourage the panel to talk about cost, but that did not come out very well. So thank you for raising the issue. I expected the utility engineers here also to raise that issue of cost, because this electricity finally has to be sold to customers who generally don't want to pay for their electricity. They would like to have it free of charge if possible. So any information about costs?
Okay, I'll start off by saying I mentioned a few laws, and one of the laws I forgot to mention is the law of economics. So we have Faraday's law, Kirchhoff's law, Ohm's law, and the law of economics. And it's quite right that we should raise that because it is probably the foremost issue. To answer the question about how much does a unit cost of storage in terms of trying to arbitrage in South Australia, we have no idea. The details of the contract, which was partly between the state government and Tesla, and partly between the Hornsdale Wind Power Park and Tesla, are still secret, effectively. So we don't really know. The analysis that we have done suggests that the battery itself does not make any money at this stage, partly because there's not a market for fast frequency response in South Australia. The battery was set up under the guises of what was called the NEG, which was a market response to South Australia, which was put up and proposed by the last Prime Minister. And if any of you have any understanding of the Australian Prime Ministership, we seem to get a new Prime Minister every year, and along with it a new energy policy. So the NEG has rapidly become not the NEG and will take on a new guise under the new Prime Minister. So in some respects it's an indication of how energy policy in Australia has become a political football, which is why there's not a lot of technical or engineering sense in the decisions that are being made both at a state level and at a federal level in Australia. So I don't have an answer to your question other than it's probably very expensive.
Dr. Muthumuni, do you have any of this secret information?
No. I don't deal with cost, I deal with the next 10 seconds after a fall. But
for a 2 megawatt system, to be fully backed up by batteries and to shift 1 kilowatt hour from our daytime, maybe about 8 hours altogether, to the evening peak. So my calculation showed me that it is something like 20 US cents just for shifting.
20 US cents to put a kilowatt hour in and take it out when you want.
And use it, yes.
And the original cost of producing that kilowatt hour has to be added to that.
Has to be added on to that.
All right. All right. Just any response on this LVRT related limitation on the number of? Yes, of course. Harsha wants. Okay, Harsha. Very briefly, please.
Cost of batteries, but not in megawatt hours, but kilowatt hour scale. It is in the region of 45 rupees per unit in the case of lithium ion. And the best battery we have come across in our pilot study, I just don't remember the type of the battery, with 5,000 cycles, it's about 23 rupees. That is the best we have got so far.
So he says 23 rupees to 45 rupees a kilowatt hour, depending on the range. Any quick intervention on this LVRT, why it was shut out after 2-3 attempts? Maybe John first?
Yeah, okay. So my interpretation of the South Australian blackout is partly a lack of understanding of the standards and the inability of the standards to really understand the technology. So this idea that wind turbines have to trip off after 3 or 5 attempts is really just a numerical decision, not something that's limited by the technology or the fact it's renewably powered.
Darshan, any quick response on this matter?
Like you said, it's because of the overheating of the resistor, the chopper, right?
Yeah.
So now they have the standards, Australian standards are asking for, I think, I can't remember, 12 or 6 or whatever. Manufacturers will do it, they will just oversize the resistor at a cost. Like this happened because 5 falls happened within 2 minutes. How often is it going to happen? Do you want to system and impose additional costs to the developer? Those are the questions.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, quickly, John.
Just to bat it back a little bit, the South Australia blackout was a consequence of 5 non-credible faults.
5
non-credible
credible. What do you mean by non-credible?
So there's no way the South Australian network had planned, and there's no way any network would have planned for 5 non-credible.
N-5 is it?
No, it is
not N-5.
It was
but
just 5 faults.
5 sequential events.
Sequence.
All right. Okay. Let's move on to another question. Yes, please.
My name is Lakmal Fernando. I'm representing Region Renewables, one of the commercial scale EPC companies in Sri Lanka. My question is to Dr. Batagoda and probably to Dr. Wijekoon. In my experience, we had a system in the past in Sri Lanka where there was a standard tariff was given for solar renewable energy, which was 2310 rupees. My question is purely commercial nature. And under this scheme, there had been close to 650 megawatts of licenses that's been applied for, and which no action has been taken. And thereafter we saw government tendering for 2 sets of 1 megawatt each location sets twice. And in the first instance we saw 30 plus licenses were given, but only to my knowledge 2 of such projects are moving forward. This, I believe, purely due to the reason that the low tariffs people have bid this for, and people who does not have any knowledge of the industry have been trying to get into this business, but finally when it comes to the financing with the bankers, obviously the projects are not moving forward. And the last set of licenses that's been advertised is pending for nearly 9 months to date, and industry is not moving forward the way that it was anticipated at the beginning. So do we see any end to this in terms of, reverting back to the previous mode and getting more renewable energy injected into the system? Or are we continuously going to be tendering every year for 1 megawatts and so on, and not having the projects?
Fine, thank you. Your question is very clear, and we need a very clear answer from Dr. Batagoda.
I think you are very correct. That's what I mentioned in my presentation as well. So we are debating groups. Some are very excited about the tendering and bringing cost down. So at the time, practically not understand. As you understand, we are learning tendering or renewable. The first time we are practicing this 2 set of wind 2 projects and the 150 megawatt, 1 megawatt tender and all the so on and so forth. As you correctly mentioned, first set of 60 megawatt took almost 1 year, and learning the experience based on that, we promised the industry next set of 90 megawatt we will do it very quickly. But unfortunately it has gone another 9 months. You are correct. I think we are learning, but what is happening in at the moment is solar and wind, still we have to move on the tendering because of Election Act requirement. But we are trying to at least to get the Act amendment for other renewable like hydro, biomass, waste to energy and so on and so forth. We are trying to introduce the previous standard tariff method. But solar and wind, I think we have to continue with the tendering, but we are trying to improve the barriers or so on and so forth. We are tendering about 10 megawatt and 100 megawatt solar park and so on and so forth. But we have to move on the competitive bidding. That's no option. We have to have it.
Answer is very clear. Do you have any follow-up question? Very briefly, please.
Little question. Now, what is going to happen for this 650 megawatts that's already been paid for? Because people have invested a lot of money, and the government had taken our money, and people are just kept in abeyance without any answer being given.
Yes, quickly.
That's actually we have not decided how to do it. Legal barrier, but solar and wind we have to continue, but we are negotiating how to deal with this 600 project, maybe 1,000, 100,000, so on and so forth we have taken. We are thinking how to do it, but still we have not made decision. And definitely this idea was these 600 people also can participate in these tenders. So we have we have 500 people bidded for last 1 megawatt tender. We hope most of them have bidded on this. So we have given some concession for them to participate.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to another question. We only have about 10 more minutes. Yes, I think Professor Lucas first and thereafter Professor Wijekoon.
My daughter has a rooftop. So I'm talking about domestic rooftops. Few days ago, the generation was 1 kilowatt hour, whereas normally it's in the range of 15 to 25 kilowatt hours. On such a day, even if you have battery storage, you can never get the energy required. So if you are going to have a 5 million rooftop isolated, how are you going to manage?
Whether there will be adequate energy to meet the demand of,
no, there won't be, because I know
same customer.
Within the last few days, one day it was something like 1 kilowatt hour, next day it was 15 kilowatt hour, on the average it's about 25 kilowatt hours.
All right, so what you are saying is if we have all the batteries in this world connected,
so
if there is no primary energy coming in.
That's right. Whereas if you are going to have individual isolated units, if you are going to put batteries to all of them, it's going to be very expensive.
Yes.
So what is the solution for that?
All right, any comment on that? Anybody? Yes, John.
I'll make a comment. What was the generation during the night?
This is solar PV. You mean the night time?
Solar.
Yes.
So zero.
Zero. So it's a
so
tremendous.
You have
it's
an
a,
isolated system.
It's a tremendous issue. If you want to be autonomous, you need a lot of batteries.
Which will not make it economical.
Yes. Which does not make it economic. Yes.
But
Which is part of the beauty of having a power system in the first place.
You won't have space to live in the house.
Space or dollars in your pocket.
Yes. Yes.
Economic angle. See, we are thinking about sometime based on economics. When the global economies move up, so people may invest in this possibly without looking at IRR, all those things. So we are moving that because when the world, we are meeting our minimum requirement. So next phase, what do with the money? So that extra money will go, we hope this type of battery, even though it's expensive, possibly.
Fine, thank you. Let's move on to the next question. The time is running out.
First of all, let me thank the whole panel for the interesting presentations and very, very timely discussion. And I am looking from MDB, a multilateral bank point of view. By the way, I am Priyanth Wijetunga from Asian Development Bank. My question to the whole panel is that we have all these different type of things to address. And in fact, as all of us know, renewable energy is, the thrust for renewable energy is there to stay, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, it will have to happen. And particularly on the government side, the utility side, the policy making, and obviously regulatory side, do you have plans in place? What kind of things you should be asking from us as assistants? It should not be the same kind of assistance which you have been asking for the last so many years, obviously, because you need different types of studies, you need different types of technology, the knowledge on technology, you need certain regulatory interventions, different to what you used to have before. And do you have these things already planned and strategies what you are going to ask from us? Because we have certain limited amount of money to be given to these countries, and obviously you should make use of it to the maximum. So I see ad hoc interventions in technology, in policies, in regulations, but I don't see an orderly way of addressing all these requirements, because you need a package. It's not just technology or policies or regulations alone. They should have to be packaged.
Fine, thank you. I think the question is directly or indirectly to the regulatory, utility, and policy representatives in the panel. Dr. Batagoda, quick response.
I think I agree, Professor Priyanth. Now, question is, we are in a transition actually. So we are transiting, as Harsha mentioned, fossil fuel to this thing. It's not that easy. So we are not together. As my presenter, I mentioned, engineering community is fully divided, completely opposite direction. So therefore, changing policies is not that easy. When you made up with mind to change the policies and regulatory, asking your help and all the things. Even to ask help from people like you or ADB, all these things, we must have some kind of a fully united agreements. So that's where we are. So we are moving forward very fast. So more and more, the conversion is happening. So we have to study that. I appreciate this type of dialogue with the expert, these countries, all these things. I think we need a lot of groundwork, a lot of information, new information, how to move forward. So we are still not ready to fully consolidated effort to changing existing regulatory policy regime to pull style, to pull upside down type thing. So we have to do it. So you have to help us. You have to propose us. So we, all together, our direction is pretty clear. So how do you go there? What are the policy changes? What are regulations? We don't know yet, but we have to study.
Fine. Dr. Wijekoon, do we know what we want?
Yeah. Actually, so if we are going with the plan renewable energies development plan, definitely our transmission and distribution network should be strengthened. And so we have requested ADB funding for these kind of activities. And also, other than that, for the capacity building of our engineers as well as development of our the system model, the model tuning, the parameter extraction and those kind of activity. Actually, we have approached ADB and now some part of TA we are discussing, and definitely, so these kind of things.
Engineer Harsha?
Yes, I think Dr. Wijekoon is quite right. We need to have a package of measures. We have done this for the energy efficiency side. We have let out a kind of a roadmap for the next 5 years at least. So similar thing, we have to stop fighting and arrive at a roadmap, as Dr. Batagoda rightly pointed out. So I think we are on the right direction, but a little bit more stability is very much welcome.
Fine. Maybe we can ask a question. Dr. Wijekoon as well, since you work in the region, comparing Sri Lanka with other regional countries, are we good regional citizens when it comes to energy or not? Quick answer.
Yeah, we are doing pretty well in terms of overall approach to renewable energy, penetration in the country, and also how we treat renewable energy. But we can do more, because we have been leading in this for a long time. Why not we do a little more?
Thank you very much. We have time for only at most 2 quick questions, I have to say, but I have 4 hands coming up already. Perhaps we'll start off with, yes, please introduce your name and then go ahead.
I'm Prof. Karunadas from the University of Moderator, Department of Electrical Engineering. My question is, so renewable energy can be integrated if we are not considering the cost aspects. So if we are happy to spend lavishly for battery storage or even going for more than 100% renewable energy composition, surely we should be able to address the intermittency during the daytime, and the stored energy can be reused during the night time. But the point is that the Sri Lanka as a country, so we are already paying excess amount of unaffordable amount of the price for the electricity. Then are we able to handle this excess cost just because we want the new technology? We have to strike a balance. The thing is that is the government is going to give any subsidies for the escalating cost from the customer's point of view? I don't think that the government is going to do it.
Fine.
So then who bears the cost at the end of the day? So still I think we are vigorously pursuing for this renewable energy without short-term strategies to face the things that we are about to face in the near future. So it is okay to go through, even the technology is not yet matured, and even there are so many other technical aspects we have to sort out. So how to control the system with large amount of renewable energy penetration, especially this decentralized control, when every controller comes into action concurrently, who is taking the lead? So many things has to be sorted out. So in this context, we are going after this renewable energy is quite okay, but we have to have short-term strategies as a country to look into the immediate requirement of the people. I'm asking the question from Dr. Batagoda. What is your short-term strategies to face this situation while we have a remote target of going this 100%? We have so many issues to handle. Are we prepared? Are we fully aware of these obstacles.
Fine. Thank you very much. To manage the time better, let us collect some questions and then allow the panel to answer. So, Dr. Batagoda, have we considered the costs and are the plans very specific? So, hold on to your answer. Let's start from this side. Quickly, your question.
I'm Dr. Indika Samrakon from Dialogue. My question is from a communications company or ICT point of view, what should be our role in this whole ecosystem and how can we get involved?
I don't know to whom the question is, perhaps Dr. Wijekoon. So hold your answer. Question from this side? Yes, go ahead, quickly.
My name is Harsha Wickramasinghe. My question is to Professor Fletcher and Dr. Muthamuni. If we move away from the standard synchronous machine, determine power systems to an inertia-less world, do you think that instead of frequency, our power balance can be managed through voltage, like what we have in say maybe a laptop and a UPS, a very simple system where inertia is not there? Is it possible?
Fine. Prepare for your answer. We'll come to you in a moment. Yes, Dr. Narendra.
I have a very basic question. Probably goes to Dr.
It's working. Yes.
Yes, Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya. Now, the Dr. Batagoda raised a question at the very beginning, saying that there's a division of opinion among the engineers. I think we are continuously proving it over the process of the panel discussion.
With the questions.
With the questions and answers. So, now we have to answer that at the end of the panel. But we have to answer, or at least we have to answer with another solution, sort of a power research institute or some study modality or something as a take forward from this panel discussion. What exactly now we are, all of us as alumni of Moderator University for the next couple of years, what are we going to fight for in this particular context? I'll finish what I want to tell with another small comment by an eminent economist. He said the first theory of, as Professor John Fletcher mentioned, the theory of economics. First theory of economics is scarcity, and first theory of politics is to ignore the first theory of economics.
All right, thank you very much. We'll take your question right at the end. Any other questions?
I'm Prinath Dayas, former staff member, University of Moderator, Department of Electrical Engineering. My question is to Dr. Batagoda. This is regarding the government policy on economic development. Now, is the policy of economic development of Sri Lanka purely based on the development of the service sector, or does it also depend on the development of the industrial sector? Now, if our future economic development would depend on the development of the industrial sector, the cost of electricity would play a major role, because our industry products will not be able to be competitive in the market, world market, if our cost of electricity is very high. So, if we are envisaging a situation where our future economic development will also depend on the development of the industries, shouldn't we pay due consideration to the cost of electricity over other priorities? Shouldn't that take the priority over other issues?
Fine.
So that is
Question
my first
is clear.
question.
Yes.
And the second question is somewhat related. Now, we have a night peak. Now, if we are, irrespective of the amount of solar generation we have, should we have non-solar power generating capacity in order to meet the peak demand? How would that affect the economics of power generation?
That's perhaps for Dr. Wijekoon. Is that the last question? Yes, of course, yes. That perhaps I think is the last question.
CEO for Lanka PLC, a renewable energy company trying to get a lion's share of this renewable energy integration. My question is, I have seen some presentations on the CB master plan, which was done at an exchange rate of 148, if I remember right, the last time I looked at it. But now today, I think we all know what has happened to our exchange rate. Given this big difference, is the CB master plan going to be revised? And going on to the next question, With the exchange rupee depreciation, I think we are quite a lot dependent on the thermal power, which we might get hit very badly. We talked about costs going up and electricity become expensive. But on the other side, the renewable energy, I think, is insulin to that. It doesn't get affected by the rupee depreciation. So take those factors, will those factors be considered in the CB future master plan?
All right, thank you very much. I think that's for Dr. Wijekoon. So we will start off with Dr. Batagoda. You had, I think, 2 questions.
Yeah, I know.
You know what they are. You go ahead.
I think you're very correct. I mentioned we are not going to have 100% immediately. That's why we go with 10 to 20, about 30%, 20%. I think we are moving forward that direction. So your question about cost, it's a very, that's why we are divided on this actually. So cost versus against what? So we are not talking about the diesel. So we are against coal. If you go against coal, the only option is go for diesel or fossil fuel. The unit cost of diesel at the current rate, minimum 25 rupees, minimum 100 rupees. And also, I recently studied it with the battery storage, solar cost is going to be 30-35 rupees. So they are talking about Korean studies recently. So if we CB is producing sometime peak demand control gas turbine about 40 rupees or something. So more and more oil price go up and foreign exchange go out of the country. So we don't know actually what are the cost between the solar with battery, wind with the battery, or biomass, or so-called renewables cost versus the fossil fuel cost. We still don't know. So that's why you're told. So if you talk about cost and only, if we don't move on this direction, sometime we end up with the trouble because the dollar was going up. So where we hit, we don't know. Unless we have dollar, we can buy oil. Another day, if country don't have dollar, so how we secure the energy in the country? So it's very difficult to estimate the so-called cost between two products. That's what we are talking about. We are moving step by step, 10%, 30%, so 100%. That's why we wanted to estimate how we can estimate the cost, exchange rate loss, and all these things.
Fine. Thank you very much. Let's move on to I think the question on communications.
For Dr. Pinath, I will mention.
Oh, yes,
Sri Lankan economy actually it is service sector economy. Industry we are not thinking about, very small percentage, at least more than 75% we are planning is to go for service sector. 10%, maybe 20% we are talking about that's the industry sector. But the cost again, so we still don't know whether moving towards the renewables or costly, or we still in the liquid based power sector is possible, we don't know.
Fine. Okay, I think Professor Prinath had another related question for the night peak. Will there be any other form of generation? Maybe Dr. Wijekoon can answer that.
Yeah, the first question is in regarding
communication.
The role of ICT in the renewable energy development. Actually, there's a lot of, a big role they can play the ICT industry, because the communication is, for an example, if you look into the system stability point of view, so rather than having ramping up a gas turbine, we can have a demand response scheme. So where a lot of ICT will be involved, right? And other thing is we can have another schemes like wide area monitoring system, where you can, in the power system, you can monitor each and every bus with high resolution data. So those kind of the things can be improved. The ICT can be involved, and the penetration level can be increased. So there's a big role to play.
Can you also take the question on the revision of the plan? The question we had from Sangani.
Yeah. Basically, the CB plan is it plans, and we are not keeping it as it is. It's a rolling plan. So we always once in every 2 years the plan will be reviewed, and then we revise all the parameters and like that. So that is actually we have started that.
I think
and
this question,
coming back to the increase of the demand, that's true actually. So basically these solar, wind, all these kind of the generations are, we consider them as a must-run generation. So where there may be the water, the hydro generation or what type another kind of generation, we can stop, and they can be considered for the night peak. But again, we need to detail analyze whether what is the loss or whether there is the gain. So that has to be analyzed actually.
Dr.
Definitely demand will increase.
Yes. Dr. Muthamani, would you like to take the question on frequency versus voltage as the control parameter of the system?
Well, I think the question is, can we operate a system just with inverters and no synchronous machines, right? I think, like you also gave an example, conceptually yes, but I think practically probably yes, with lot of R&D going into that, right? Concept to make it a reality is a different thing. Like it's already in operation. Like if you think of offshore wind farms connected through DC links, like Dolwin 3 is a 900 megawatt wind farm in Germany, similar concept. But to make that concept work, we had to work with GE for 3 years. So I think it's possible, but with lot of R&D and especially to protect steady state, yes, easy, probably. But to protect the equipment, meet grid response requirements, it would be a lot of work. A better option probably is sync condensers and some synchronous machines.
Fine, thank you very much. The last question I will take.
You want to add?
Did we? Oh, yes, please.
In some respects, the two questions, the question on communications and the question on frequency, are kind of related. In terms of communications, aiming for some real-time telecoms so that we can transfer data in real time, and real time in terms of what the power system needs. That can help run systems, power systems, with this different paradigm. And also to give another example of systems that run on a wide-ranging frequency, things like the A380. It's an aircraft that carries 500 people. It runs on a wild frequency. It's all possible.
Thank you very much. I think we'll have to take the last question. Dr. Narendra, where does all this take us from here? Are we going to leave this place with an open mind, accepting the fact that there are different points of view? Or do we perhaps establish a mechanism in which we can address these questions in a more professional manner as we go into the future? So I think you gave me a hint that perhaps something like a think tank or energy or power management institute or power research institute, whatever we may call it, is perhaps required, which links the policymakers, the utilities, the academia, as well as the entrepreneurs and the regulator as well, into a system where such a structure can bring these people together and work for improving the knowledge and learning from the experience of these various groups and assisting the government to show the clear pathway. So I would perhaps suggest to the Electrical Engineering Society to include this requirement or this observation as one of their recommendations, in addition to the very good thoughts and comments made by our panel and the good questions that we heard from the audience as well. So unfortunately we have exceeded our time already by 20 minutes. So with my apologies to the organizers, I will herewith bring the panel discussion to a conclusion. Thank you very much, everybody.
Well, after such an interesting and a very productive discussion on the future of Sri Lanka in terms of renewable energy, to recognize the best final year project of 2017. To present the tokens, let me cordially invite Professor Cecil Kumaravadu, Head of the Department of Electrical Engineering. The best final year project of 2017 is the development of a laboratory setup to teach control area network. Team members of this project are Mr. Jeevanjana Liyanage, Ms. Thisuri Indikatiya, and Mr. Shehan Akmimana. Thank you, sir.
Now it is time to present certificates to the office bearers of EESoc for the year 2017. To give away the certificates, let me cordially invite Dr. Vasara Samarasinghe, Senior Treasurer of EESoc. Mr. Sudhira Gamage, Vice President. Mr. Jeevanjana Liyanage, Vice President. Mr. Shihan Aknimana, Secretary. Mr. G.K. Lahiru Sampath, Committee Member. Thank you, Madam. Roundtable conference being concluded, now it is time to felicitate the panelists for their immense contribution towards making this event a huge success. To present the tokens of appreciation, let me invite Dr. D.P. Chandima, President of EESoc. Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya. Professor John Fletcher. Dr. Darshana Muthumuni.
Dr. H.M. Wijekoon Banda. Engineer Harsha Wickramasinghe. And Engineer Champika Periyapperuma. Thank you, sir.
I would like to invite the Secretary of Electrical Engineering Society, Mr. Sanira Wickramadachchi, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Guest of Honor, Head of Power and Energy System, University of New South Wales, Australia, Professor John Fletcher. Vice Chancellor of University of Moratuwa, Professor K.K.C.K. Pereira. Dean, Faculty of Engineering, University of Moratuwa, Professor Nalin Wickramarachchi. Head of the Department of Electrical Engineering, Professor Cecil Kumaravadu. Members of the academic staff of Department of Electrical Engineering. Invitees, distinguished guests, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. We as the EESoc organized our annual flagship event this year on Renewable Integrated Secure Power System for Sri Lanka, which is a timely and important topic. As upcoming engineers, we organized this event with the objective of providing a better insight of renewable integration to Sri Lankan power system and its challenges and solutions. The great success we achieved today is a result of hard work and commitment of many. Therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who was with us on behalf of the EESoc Executive Committee. I express my sincere gratitude to the guest of honor, Head of Power and Energy Systems, University of New South Wales, Australia, Professor John Fletcher, for gracing this event with his presence. I would like to thank Professor K.K.C.K. Pereira, the Vice Chancellor of University of Moratuwa, for his valuable presence, inspiring words, and for his immense support and the support from the university. My sincere gratitude goes out to the distinguished panelists who joined us tonight. Moderator, Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya, Managing Director of Resource Management Associates Private Limited. Professor John Fletcher, Head of Power and Energy Systems, University of New South Wales, Australia. Dr. B.M.S. Batagoda, Secretary, Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy, Sri Lanka. Dr. H.M. Wijekoon Banda, Chief Engineer, Transmission Planning Division, Ceylon Electricity Board, Dr. Darshana Muthumuni, Managing Director, Manitoba HVDC Research Center, Canada, Mr. Harsha Wickramasinghe, Deputy Director General at Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority, and Mr. Champika Periyapperuma, Director Technical at Region Renewable Private Limited. Thank you all for your contribution in the Roundtable Conference and your active participation in making it an interesting and constructive discussion. On behalf of EESoc and the Department of Electrical Engineering, University of Moratuwa, I sincerely thank our advisor, Dr. Narendra De Silva, Head of Engineering at Lanka Electricity Company Private Limited, for the unconditional support and the guidance in organizing EESoc Roundtable Conference 2018. I would like to thank the patrons of EESoc, Professor Samarajiva Karunaratna, Professor Rohan Lucas, Professor Ranjit Pereira, and the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, University of Moratuwa, Professor Nalin Wickramarachchi, and the Head of the Department of Electrical Engineering, Professor Sisil Kumaravadu, for their valuable advices and guidance. The great driving force behind the success of electrical engineering society, our academic staff, who is with us always, guiding us to achieve this level of excellence in everything we do. Let me take this opportunity to thank all for your support and the guidance. From the beginning of our term of EESoc Executive Committee, there were two strong pillars of support who were constantly with us through each step we took. They are none other than Dr. D.P. Chandima, President of EESoc, and Dr. Asara Samarasinghe, the Senior Treasurer of EESoc. You acted far beyond the responsibilities as the President and the Senior Treasurer, being with us through thick and thin, which helped us immensely in making this event a success. Dear Sir and Madam, we are able to conclude another successful EESoc Roundtable Conference. Thank you. This event would not have been reality without the financial support of our sponsors. I would like to thank, as diamond sponsor, Sun Power Renewables Private Limited, as gold sponsor, Lakdanavi Limited, as silver sponsors, ACL Cables PLC, Lanka Electricity Company Private Limited, National Savings Bank, as bronze sponsor, IDP Sri Lanka, and all the sponsors who have contributed in video banners, hard banners, donations, and souvenir advertisements. I would like to pay a special thank for all the staff of Bandaranayaka Memorial International Conference Hall and the staff of Mount Lavinia Hotel for all the support. Senior EESoc members and former EESoc Executive Committee members helped us from the beginning of the event, from the fanning stage, and kept a keen attention on our work and guided to make this event a reality. So, I thank them all the great support provided. I would like to thank members of the non-academic staff of the Department of Electrical Engineering for assisting us in every possible way organizing this event successfully. I would also like to pay a special thank for all my brothers and sisters of Level 4, Level 3, Level 2, and Level 1 batches in Department of Electrical Engineering and consistent hard work to uphold this event an ultimate level. And last but not least, I thank you all present here today for being with us. Thank you all for your well wishes. I hope that Electrical Engineering Society, University of Moratuwa, will strengthen up day by day and will become a central hub which interconnects all the electrical engineers in the society. We are forever grateful to all of you for being part of it. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was an absorbing and a fruitful evening which illuminated our minds. Now it is time to mark the conclusion of this event.
But the night is still young, so enjoy the fellowship dinner and the entertainment session which has been arranged at the banquet hall. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Have a good night.
hospital.